flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Elizabeth, roll call, please. Present.
Trustee Shara,
Here.
trustee Chester,
Here.
Okay, so I'll report for the record that, thank you, Chia. I'll report for the record that trustee Paul Brook will not be attending this evening. And trustee Tippishall will be attending as soon as she gets checked into her hotel. So the floor is open. I think there was a sign-up sheet.
was there? I didn't see it.
Mayor, may I add my name to the sign-up sheet for public comment?
Absolutely. You know what? I'll go through the people here in person and then I'll go right to the phone.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So please put it on mute for the time being. Thank you. All right, who's first?
Well, I was first on the list.
All right. And also, does anyone have any questions beforehand about what this local law is?
I do. So let me ask that question.
Okay, so last year, we began discussions with the Weewa Beach Club to co-manage the facility. One of the responses from the Weewa Beach Club was that it would be impossible to change the village code in time to do that. But we agreed that moving forward, we would develop a committee together to talk about co-managing. And obviously, one of the first things we would need to do is change the law to allow that.
Okay. Not sure that's completely true, but.
What?
But-
What do you mean that that's not completely true?
I'm not sure that changing the law, well, let me take a step back.
Yeah, Jay, if you don't mind, since Brian's here, and I think this question's on the minds of a lot of people, we can kind of get some meaning behind this change out, so
Okay.
everyone understands. So Brian, please correct me if I'm wrong. What we're really doing is changing the law where it says Weewa Beach Club to another private organization. Because it's not appropriate to have a law that specifically addresses a private entity. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I identified the problem with the law, and that was that you can't have a local law that exclusively recognizes a private club to operate Weewa Beach, the lake, it's village property. It's fine to have a license agreement, it's fine to have some type of agreement in order to allow that to happen, but the way the law was written, the village literally had written into the law that you couldn't swim there unless you were a member of this private club, and that's just improper. And so I recommended it be changed to just say that the village is in charge of the Weewa Lake and it can do a license agreement with any club, wherever that may be. It doesn't stop the Weewa Beach Club from operating or continuing a license agreement. It's just the law itself was improper because a village law cannot say we're exclusively allowing this club to use our village property. And that's really the basis of this change.
And if this law passes without any changes, tomorrow, I know it takes 90 days to go in effect or some length of time. Literally nothing changes unless the Board of Trustees revokes the licensing agreement and rewrites it or does something different, correct?
That's correct.
Or there was talk about a joint club, remember earlier on last year? So that would require, which is not anyone's intention, that would require a separate health permit, our own lifeguards. These are all things that are not being considered, as I've said in numerous publications over the last couple of weeks.
And next year, even with this change in the law, if it goes forward tonight, the same exact lease agreement could be, there's nothing that has to change,
Correct.
could be executed with the Weewa Beach Club. And we could have the same exact,
Hi, Serene, do you mind putting it on mute?
same exact relationship we have today, next year, despite this law being changed.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I don't.
To be clear, this doesn't change any existing relationships. All it does is fix a local law that improperly recognized by name a private organization as having exclusive use of village property. That's not proper under the law.
And there's one other thing that was added that says before only property owners who weren't members of the Weewa Beach Club were allowed to swim, but now any property owner or resident like the village is allowed to swim. But the lease agreement prevents anybody from using the Weewha Beach Club to swim unless
They're a member.
member. So it really doesn't even allow me, who's not a member,
Correct.
to go swimming in the Weewha Beach Club right now. And it won't, when it passes, as long as this lease agreement's in place.
Right.
So,
Okay.
so that's, I think, the big picture I wanted to make sure everybody understood.
Thank you,
So I
Chris. I really
understood
appreciate that.
That helps. Okay, so but let me start out. I'm
Sure.
Barry Scott. I live at 121 Laurel Road. Amongst other positions in the town and village, I'm a member. And here's my concern. One of the reasons that the beach club was identified as being the operator was to keep the village out of the beach club. Because while we are an exceptional village, I find it hard to believe that any government can run a focused organization better than a group of dedicated private. Putting that to the side. If, as you say, any village resident can swim at the Weewha, what happens when someone who isn't a member of the beach club shows up and says, well, law says I can swim?
We have a lease agreement that the property is exclusive to the Weewha Beach Club during this period of time.
Okay, fine. The other issue that I hear is that people want to go swimming an hour when the beach club isn't open. For that to happen, the village would have to operate the beach,
Correct.
or you would have
Illegal swimming.
illegal swimming.
That's correct.
Okay, as long as we're clear, because illegal swimming leads to drowning. Drowning happens like that. If you're down at the Weewha and it's just you, something goes wrong. When the beach club opens.
There will be no permission for anyone to swim in the Weewha that is not a member of the Weewha Beach Club.
No, I'm not- Or any, that's
I
fine.
thought that was.
That's, was not clear, and I want to make
Well,
Well, it's clear because there's a
there's-
lease agreement.
Well, for this year.
you can still
anyway.
swim if you live on the Weewha
Right.
at your own
That's always
risk.
been the law.
if you're a property owner, you
Right.
can
Correct.
swim on your own property at
With
your own
your
risk.
guests.
Of
Correct.
course. If you're a resident of the village, you can't swim currently there unless you're a member of the club.
Correct.
During club hours with a lifeguard, et
Even
cetera.
if this passes, that's still.
That's correct.
Okay,
When you say village, do you mean the village of Tuxedo Park, or you're talking about the hamlet?
I mean, the village of Tuxedo Park. Hamlet members who are members of the club, the beach club, can swim. That's the traditional arrangement. That's a whole argument that's already happened. I don't want to revisit. My real concern is having to deal with a dead kid because somebody went swimming with worms.
Which technically they could do right now. Just because
That
the
is-
rule says you
They
can't.
could do that today.
But
Tonight.
previous iterations of this discussion have suggested that the village would allow people to swim when the club wasn't operating if they were village residents.
The conversation that I recall was a dual club running at the same time, a village operated club and a Weewha Beach Club operated club. These were just ideas that were kicked around before last season. And I'm aware that you would require a health permit and lifeguards to make that happen.
Yeah.
That's not happening.
That's fine.
Omar Delgado.
Like I said, we got presented with a piece of paper, some.
Well, look, I've been publishing information on this for weeks. Someone could have called me and I could have explained it. I mean, I sent a letter, an open letter to everybody about what this was about. There's an undercurrent here, and I feel like we're repeating what happened in the spring. This is not about closing the Weewha Beach Club. I've heard rumors that I'm getting rid of the Weewha Beach Club, that I'm not permitting people that helped build Tuxedo Park come into the beach, to the village anymore. All this is a lie, and it's perpetuated to undermine me and my ability to negotiate. I'm telling you now, we have an agreement with the Weewha Beach Club Executive Committee to discuss co-management for next year. Period. If you've got issues of concern, that's the appropriate time to bring them up. This is a simple law change with a full explanation that I've written about in the newsletter and on the website.
Well, I appreciate that you've written about it in the newsletter
Right.
and on the website.
Thank
And
you.
I've read everything that you published,
Right,
and I still have questions.
right.
And last I checked, the purpose of a public.
That's
hearing
correct.
Was for the public to come and voice opinions and concerns,
That's correct.
which I think I have done. And I don't think that I have said anything that's intended to undermine your authority.
Well, I don't appreciate the kid drowning thing, to be honest with you, because kids can drown anytime, has nothing to do with my putting this law up. And I don't pin that on me.
Sorry, that was not my intention.
Well, that's how it
And
came out.
I apologize. And
I
say
accept
that
your
now
apology.
In the record, I was not trying to assign blame for any of that to you.
The association was that if I passed this law, a kid could drown. You think I would do that?
No, that was,
Okay.
well,
All
I'm
right.
sorry if you took it that way.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. I accept your apology.
Good evening, board members. I'm Mark Citron, 30 Homer Road. I just wanted to follow up with respect to the language of your proposed local law, because I think there's a problem that can be rectified by changing the language slightly. As I read section B, the new language is resident or non-resident property owner or accompanied guest of a resident or non-resident property owner of the village of Tuxedo Park, or a member of any organization licensed or operated by the village. The mayor has said that that would be subject to the terms of the licensing. I submit that in order for the law to be truly effective, there should be language in here that says that the resident or non-resident property owner may use the law.
I'm sorry,
subject
but
to
somebody
the
on the call
terms
has
of
to
the
put
licensing agreement. So
their phone
it's
on mute.
clear.
There's a lot of feedback.
New language is subject
Thank
to
you.
the terms. To say that is fine, but if a resident were to come to the beach club here and say, I'm a resident, here's the local law. It says or, resident or member of the beach club, they would be well within their rights to simply walk in and go swimming. So I would submit that a change in the language would be required and should be referenced in the law itself. This particular statute or code is subject to the terms of the licensing agreement that the village has with any particular club, since we're not going to name the We Want Beach Club.
Judge, I'll leave that to Brian. You care to comment?
Yeah, I mean, we can review that. Right now, the language is unless he's a resident or non-resident property owner or an accompanied guest of a resident or non-resident property owner of the village or member of any organization or club license. So it's somewhat broad. It's a matter of who the village wants to allow, to swim there.
Well, any resident can swim subject to the terms of the licensing agreement should be in there as part of the provision that allows the residents to swim in the WeWa. You understand?
Yeah, I think your point is that regardless of whether it's the WeWa Beach Club or some other organization, you're going to have a licensing agreement, and the way the language is currently written, regardless of who's operating it, a resident, not a member of the club, a resident could use the club.
That's how I interpret it.
I
So you
understand.
really have to make it conditional.
Brian, is that?
Well, I don't know if I agree with that, but we'll certainly consider it.
Okay, the other thing is, I am one of the members of the WeWa Beach Club Executive Committee, and we are looking forward to meeting with Ms. Devani and members of her committee as soon as possible, when the season ends, perhaps, to begin discussions. So there won't be any concern that we don't have sufficient time to at least discuss our respective positions. So I would invite the mayor to speak to his committee members, and I can be contacted at any time, and we can get together at everyone's convenience.
Point taken. Thank you.
The list is here.
I do.
On that call,
I'm guilty of many things, but not stealing the list.
I
Maybe
do
we should just read the name out of the person we know.
Charlene Cathcart is next.
I'm Colin Cathcart. I've been a resident here since 1969, in my home for over 50 years now. I've served in the village as on the zoning board, chairman of the zoning board, and what have you. I am concerned about this thing with the WeWa Beach Club. As my husband picked that up, he did not. Yes, he let you know that he thinks it's all wrong. There was nothing wrong with the way it was. He grew up here. His mother belonged to the club, Tuxedo Club, and the WeWa Beach Club. And it's been that way for several generations. He does not think it should change. I'm saying this for him because he's not able to be here. For me, I must say, I agree with my husband. I am a member of the Weewa Beach Club, and I think that they run it quite well. I have several things wrong. I think that what you said about the wording in that should be made clear. I also want to know why the Weewa Fishing Club is not included in that,
They are intended to be included in that,
but it's not.
Brian.
I think they are.
They are.
Yeah,
I
they're
thought
in
you
here.
said the Weewa Beach Club.
The Weewaa Fishing Club was removed and replaced with the same language as,
Yeah, to make it general. In other words, we're not naming any specific group.
Oh, you're not
Weewa
naming
Beach
any
Club
group.
or the Fishing
Correct.
Club are both out as far as those names.
So, I'm sorry that I'm not here more often, but we were stuck down south for over a year with the pandemic and my husband ended up in the hospital, so, I'm glad to be here now, but we all feel very strongly about the Weewa Beach Club. I think that what you've done before is wrong. I think that limiting them to members who were members in 2019 is wrong from the Hamlet. I think they should go back to anybody who was previously a member if they left in good standing. There was no water in the Weewa for them to go to in 2019, so they didn't spend their money to join. 2020, we had the pandemic, so we couldn't go. So I'm just bringing this up because I think that should be considered. And I'm sorry that I'm not here more often. We will soon be going back down south, so my husband will be here as doctor. But I just want to get this across, that that's our feeling, and we are willing to fight it as much as we have to get it across. That we feel the Weewa Beach Club has been run correctly. And like I say, I have been a member, and they've done a good job down there. It's awfully hard right now to find a lifeguard anywhere, so they've had to close some days because of that. But to get revenue in, for them to be able to fix the place up, they need to have these other members back. And some of them are members of several generations of the same family who built this. And that was done to Weewa Beach Club. But people of the hamlet, not for the people in the park, believe it or not, it was really done for the people in the hamlet who helped build this place. They're also our firemen and our ambulance members. And heaven help if you have a fire and they aren't allowed to use the beach club.
Why?
I just don't like that idea. at
You
all.
mean, what would happen if they're not allowed to use the beach club and there was a fire?
You might drive very slowly. I'll tell you
Really?
what, I used to be on the ambulance corps, I was also
Mhm.
captain. I would drive very slowly.
What I'm hearing, Janet, is unbelievable. So here,
Anyway.
okay, I love you.
I'm
You know
getting my
that.
feet
We're
in the
neighbors
water.
for years.
Yeah.
But what you just said is stunning to me.
Well, I don't think it is.
I mean, what's going on,
I
people?
think what we're doing is trying to stab the hamlet in the back.
Let me say again. It's very difficult to manage the Weewa Beach Club. It's a challenge. It's tough. We haven't had members for years because of the conditions you just mentioned.
Right.
It occurred to me a month or two before the season opened. And after looking at the finances, you know what? Somebody approached me and said, I'll give you $100,000 if the village runs it. Like the Village Boat Club, which is village property run by the Village Boat Club, only residents of the village. It's very successful. So someone told me, if we run it, I'll give you $100,000 to improve the park. So I brought up the idea, heaven forbid, because it created the biggest firestorm as you can see. Now, I also guaranteed in that negotiation, that idea session I had with Bonnie, Bonnie's here, I think. She could attest to this publicly, which I would appreciate. I offered a 5 to 10 year guarantee of Hamlet membership. That was never reported. So I feel like we're on the same team, but I don't feel like I'm being treated that way.
Well, I hope so.
Now, everything you said, I agree with. And that's why we set up a committee for next season. I think we're ahead of schedule, Judge. I mean, this was an important thing to do. We're ahead of schedule. It's not even, the season's not even over, and we've already done this long, theoretically. So we're ahead of schedule. So I hope at some point in time, we all look back and say, wow, everything's working for everybody,
Well, I would hope so.
for everybody. Now, in terms of the membership, we were
Anybody in the village of Tuxedo Park, because the village, Hamlet used to be referred to as the village, so I'm clarifying that. Anybody who was in here could belong to the Weewa Beach Club.
correct.
So there's no problem with that.
And so what happened this year in the negotiations in the prior board, you were a member of the prior, Tina was a member. The request was to include Boy Scout leaders, village council supervisors and council people, Little League, Boy Scout, Girl Scout. Did they build the park? No, they didn't. Do you also know that you can live in the hamlet, have been a member, and move to Southfields and still be a member? Is that in the spirit of the original deal? Okay, so yes, there is control in membership, but I think that it's my responsibility as a fiduciary of the village. I represent the village taxpayer. I don't represent the hamlet. Now, don't kick me in the ass, that's just a fact. So, you know, I mean, I have to protect the village, and I think I'm doing a damn good job. It's a great season, everyone's happy, you guys are doing a terrific job with COVID. That's it. Let's all be on the same team. I have a feeling that if we can co-manage next year, I can get hundreds of dollars into that to fix it up for everybody.
Well, if they could bring their members back in, they probably could do it themselves.
But I'm talking about people donating money. The type of situation where everyone donated money for
I'm
the
sorry,
village.
we
People
lost
are willing to donate money to fix up the park. Pardon?
Every year, I donate to them.
And I'm sure we appreciate it. I don't know if anyone here remembers, when I was not in elective office about 8 years ago, I got a call from Bonnie saying she couldn't raise the money and wanted to expand the boundaries from the hamlet to the town. Do you hear what I said? She wanted to expand the boundaries from the hamlet to the town. I went out and I got $5,000. I raised $5,000 for that club. So people here in this room know that. So to say I'm an anti-Weewha Beach Club is just a constant thorn in my side. I just feel like I'm being thrown under the bus
Well, that's not what I'm saying.
because I raised that money for the beach club so they wouldn't have to go to the town to ask for more membership.
So I agree with the way you have it. I don't think everybody needs that. Anyway, I don't want to take up any more of your time.
No, I appreciate it.
I'm trying to
I
understand.
mean, right now, I'm on the side of the Weewha Beach Club.
That's good.
But, and I hope if my house burns, the people that may not be members will come and put out my fire.
I'm sure.
That's the kind of stuff we've been hearing for years.
Anyway, I thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Frida,
Is this my God?
I
no.
don't think so.
So my name is Frida Cathcart. I grew up here in the park, Charlon's daughter. Graduated from Tuxedo Park School in '76. If that was. I just wanted to take this opportunity to say how important a feature it is to have the Weewha Beach Club and the importance of the relationships that can last years. I live in Roanoke, Virginia now, and a friend that I reconnected with at church grew up in the town. And the cross-pollination between the town and the village of Tuxedo Park is important as far as building respect and friendships that can last a lifetime beyond these borders. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. It seems from just hearing what's going on, there has been confusion about what is happening, and clarity is so important. And in the writing of the lease, it sounds like, you know, making sure that the wording is clear about being a member of the beach club. I also say, as a child growing up here in Tuxedo Park, kids are going to swim wherever they're going to swim, because we did, with or without permission. And there was one time I got taken out by the village police and got disciplined by my parents. So I recall, it happens. But anyhow, I just wanted to thank you for your attention to this and just saying how much of a difference it does make. And it is important to have good relationships between the village and the Weewha Beach Club and the members of the town.
I certainly agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bonnie Takuchi,
We've been looking for lifeguards. This is my second. Between Tom Saliano was here and we had been involved with operating the beach club as president for the past 40, 45 years, Tom, I guess.
No longer for me.
In the legislative, I want to clear up a couple of things that I think may not have been intentional, but I think are unclear to people as they read the proposal that was sent out. One of those was in the legislative intent. And
I'm sorry, we can't hear any of the people speaking.
okay,
We're doing the best we can, sorry.
in the legislative intent, it's somewhat incorrect to say that village residents and property owners cannot use the property leased by the Weewha Beach Club unless they are a member or guest of the Weewha Beach Club. Village residents may use the property. This has been a change. It is a change that has emanated from a change from the Department of Health. Years ago, they told us no one could be on that property except when the lifeguard was on duty, the gate was open, and at all other times, we had to post a no trespassing sign, and that the no trespassing dusk till dawn, and when the gate is closed, the beach is closed, period.
Do you think that's good for village-town
No,
relationships?
that was, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, what I'm saying is, that's what the Department of Health told us we had to do. Years ago, when I was a little girl and swimming at the beach, the lifeguard went off duty and we all went in the water and, played King of the Raft and all kinds of games that you're not allowed to do when the lifeguard's there. And that's the way we grew up for many years. Tom, you know that, right? But then the Department of Health got involved and they said, no, you cannot let people have access to a hazard, the swimming, the waterfront. So and believe me, it was difficult because people were used to moving their cars outside the gate would get locked, and then they'd walk right back in and sit at their picnic tables and stay there till they wanted to go home. That was much easier to enforce. Nobody was unhappy. Believe me, we made a lot of people unhappy when we started to enforce what the Department of Health told us we had to do.
Did they say you weren't allowed to swim after hours?
Oh, you could never swim out.
But did they say you were also not allowed on the premise?
Yes, and that has changed now. Now the Department of Health has told us that they have many places that are under their jurisdiction where a little league field and a playground abuts a swimming situation, maybe a pool, maybe a lake like we have. And they do not preclude the residents of that town or village from using the other amenities, given that proper signage is posted that no one may swim without a lifeguard on duty. That has been a change from the Department of Health. And just to sort of back up the history of this, I called and asked to speak just last week to a senior sanitarian at the Department of Health, someone who's been there for 21 years, a very same person who used to come and inspect our village, our beach, when he was, first in the department.
Name?
And his name is, hold on.
You can give it to you later.
But anyway, he confirmed to me, yes, Bonnie, I remember those days when Jane Harkinson was running this place. Nobody could set foot on your property, beach club property, not my property. When the gate was closed, that's what we used to have to enforce. And he said, but things have changed. And that has been told to village residents. We have been saying for the last few years
Mhm.
that as long as they don't swim, they can come and play in the sand, they can, and certainly off-season, once, we close Labor Day, off-season, it has, all the mayors that I've ever dealt with have promoted the beach club as a place to go and
I have to, yes.
have a excuse me?
I have also, yes.
Yes. So it is not correct that at this point in time, village residents do not have the right to be on the Weewha Beach Club property when the gate is closed.
So the code needs to change.
She's talking about the legislative intent, which is something Brian
Right, the
actually caught.
legislative
Yeah, that was
intent
already-
says-
Oh, okay.
We changed it today, Brian, the attorney sent it, change.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was not informed of that.
No, that's right. The language of the legislative intent, section 1, is not part of the actual changes to the code language. And it was amended today. I submitted an updated version to make it more general. So the specific language that you quoted has been deleted. Now it just says that it's intent to the local law. As it currently stands, the village code includes certain restrictions on the use of the Weewa Lake property for the benefit of the Weewa Beach Club. That's the gist of that.
Can we get a
first
copy of that
paragraph.
out now?
It was sent, but I don't know if it's been put out, but it's not a change to the code language. So for example, we talked about earlier, I just want to be clear, this change, the language about 2019 and who's a member, that's all part of the license agreement. This law, it doesn't deal with the license agreement. All it's changing is it's taking out references to the Weewa Beach Club specifically and the Weewa Fishing Club specifically, because the law cannot properly say that the village property will be used by that club. The language that was mentioned earlier by the judge about accompanied guests or members and residents, that was already in the code. We didn't add anything new there. It's the exact same language. All the village law here, the proposed law does, instead of the Weewa Beach Club, it says, or a member of any organization or club licensed or operated by the village, so that it takes out the name Weewa Beach Club and leaves it to any club that's licensed, because again, as I said earlier, the village cannot properly name a specific private club in a local law and say that you're the chosen club. We just can't do that. The rest of this code doesn't really change anything. The license agreement is still in place, and any issues with the license agreement can be addressed, but they're not part of this local law. All this local law is really doing is taking out the names of those two clubs and making it generic, because the village cannot recognize a specific club. It's just not lawfully proper to say, we're going to let you, the Weewa Beach Club or private organization, be the only club that runs our lake, our property. We can't do that, but we can have a license agreement, which we do, and we can continue that license agreement for the next 100 years without an issue. But it was just a code provision that was improper because it had names of private clubs in a village law.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I think the legislative intent is the first thing that people were reading. And I think because there is a misunderstanding of the change in attitude from the Department of Health, and which now has filtered down to the Weewa Beach Club. Our staff often arrives and there are people there on the sand or playing on the playground or whatever. And as long as they're not in the water, if they're in the water, they have to be asked to get out of the water. If we go there to do some work pre-operating hours when there's no lifeguard there, they may not be in the water. And that's state code that none of us is going to be able to circumvent in any way. I also, to back up what Mark was saying, and I'm not quite sure, Mr. Nugent, on part B, I believe, I'm not a lawyer, but the stuff that is underlined is new language, and the stuff that is crossed out is old language. Is that correct?
For the most part, but actually, if you look what's crossed out is member or guest of a member of the Weewa Beach Club or owner of the property that joins the water line. That part was deleted. And yes, what was inserted
Okay,
is.
so then the or in question that Mr. Citrin talked about, where it lists all, the people that are residents or non-resident property owners or accompanied guests of a resident or non-resident property owner of the Village of Tuxedo Park, or a member of any organization. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but that implies to me that's two different groups of people. The people that are members of the organization or the people who live here or own property here.
That's correct.
So, well, then that's a problem. Do you not see that that's a problem? Because somebody reading this will say, of course I can come and swim here anytime I want, because it says, it doesn't say I have to be a member. It says I have to be a resident or a property owner, but it doesn't say I have to be a member.
We don't have any resolutions provisions that allow people to swim there. There's nothing in this law that says you can swim.
It says no person shall bathe, da, 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 unless he or she is a resident or non-resident property owner or accompanied guest of a resident or non-resident property owner of the Village of Tuxedo Park. Or, to me, that's a problem. I don't know, am I the only one that sees that?
I see what you're saying, but I think the village does have some work to do as far as rules and regulations, postings, and with the license agreement can be a required posting that says members only during these hours when lifeguards on duty, period. And if somebody wants to say, well, the law says this, then call cops, they know what the license agreement says, they know what the posting is.
I think that was also, if you look at provision A, it was to match the existing language that says you can fish on the lake if you are a resident or non-resident property owner or an accompanied guest. So those people could already go out on the lake, and it seemed inconsistent to say you can go out fish on the lake, but you can't wade in the lake. So I think that was.
It's really access to the beach club, to the swing hole, I think is what.
Boat on Tuxedo Lake, but you can't swim in it.
That's what it,
Right.
that's what it did say, yes.
That's what it used to say.
Well, those were two of the things. I don't want to take up all the time, but there were a number of questions that were addressed by TPFYI. And I think I will skip those, and if they don't come up in somebody else's comments, I might get up again. But I do want to address, Mr. Mayor, the idea of Hamlet membership. I am a Hamlet person.
Is this something that can be discussed with the committee over the fall about the next lease agreement? Or is this about this law?
Well, there's no discussion of Hamlet membership in the local law.
There's no discussion of the Hamlet membership in the local law. Meaning we're not here to discuss the Hamlet membership.
Okay. So I will keep my comment for that meeting, but you did reference it earlier and say that you had been maligned and misquoted.
Correct,
And I was one of the people with whom you were talking.
correct.
I don't believe I've ever maligned and misquoted you, and I do have questions about it. I would be happy to speak with you about them privately, but what you have said is unclear, and I think that clarification is very important to the Rewa Beach Club. We are a club of village and hamlet members, and people feel very strongly about both groups maintaining that relationship.
Well, that's good because that's what we intend to do.
Well, okay, then I'll go back to my other questions if we're not going to talk about that. So the questions posed were whether there would be any restrictions in terms of how and from where residents would be allowed to access the lake. Quote, this is quoting you, Mr. Mayor. The idea is to have the attorney draft a local law allowing the village residents to use the facility during the summer when the Rewa Beach Club is under lease to that property. Right now, they are mutually exclusive.
When was that written?
That was your statement at the July 21st board meeting.
Right, and then we discussed that that wasn't going to happen. And we agreed to make a committee to move forward. So that's old news. It's no longer relevant. I'm not sure, did the Facebook page post my open letter to the Rewa Beach Club and Village Community last week?
I'm not on Facebook.
When it was posted, when I saw these posts, I sent an open letter, which I hence put on the website, trying to alleviate some of these issues. Apparently it wasn't posted. We should post both sides of the story.
I understand. Whose Facebook page?
Pardon me?
Whose Facebook page?
The Rewa Beach Club Facebook page.
I don't know. I
Okay.
don't subscribe to. I don't.
It can be
go on
seen on the
Facebook.
village website.
Yes, and why we usually forward.
I'm sorry, aren't we supposed to be discussing the local law?
Tika has a few things to say.
So would you like to continue?
Well, I'm not sure if because you keep saying that things have been addressed that I'm not aware of have been addressed. So I don't know how many of my questions are relevant. Here's a question that comes up that I'm frequently asked. I think it has been mentioned, I don't know, proposed, but mentioned, that one of the intents might be to have people who live in the village be able to join the Rewa Beach Club for free. They would be automatically members of the club.
Bonnie, this has nothing to do with the local law.
Yeah,
These are all.
talk about the local law, please.
Okay, but if
Just
if
the
it's
local law.
understanding, negotiating with you, because it sounds like you can choose any organization. And we know that there are other organizations, for example, in 2008, there were other groups of citizens who made a proposal to operate the beach club. So who are we gonna, are we going to be who you're negotiating with?
Right now, I think the judge can attest, the negotiating partner we have moving forward for the next season is the Weewa Beach Club.
And the fishing club.
Nothing's changed.
Well, nothing's changed, but what if another offer comes that just sounds great?
Can we stick to the local law?
Local law, please. Yes, let's just stick to the
These
local
are
law.
all legitimate questions, Bonnie, but let's have them in our discussion.
Yes, I agree. Let's just continue with the local law and move on. It's already, you know what? 5 minutes.
I am prepared to negotiate in good faith. I always have. I offered a 5 to 10 year guarantee last time. I'm prepared to sit at the table in good faith, but I'm getting to the end of my rope.
I don't think I've been disrespectful. I have certainly been.
Well, I've been told tonight that if I don't go along, my house may burn. And if I pass this law, kids might drown. So that's where I'm sitting right now. Figure of speech, okay? Relax.
And I didn't say either of those things. I think my questions have been legitimate. They may not be appropriate for what we're talking about. I guess that's what I'm thinking, that in this discussion, what I'm asking is too particular to the operation of each club and not germane to the law. Is that?
Yeah, so let me just say something on that. The reference to the Weewa Beach Club in this law, whether it was taken out as we're doing now or not, was not lawful. The village could license with another club tomorrow if it wanted to last year. That's the whole point. The provision is not lawful. You cannot have a local law that says the village property will be exclusive to this private club. So yes, you're right. If another club came up next year with 70% of the residents and they said, we don't like the Weewa Beach Club, we want to form our own club, and the village chose to license with them, you're right, they could. But that was true anyway, because this law would never be upheld as it's written now. You can never have exclusive use of village property assigned to a specific private club. I was kind of shocked to even see it in there. It's just unheard of. You can't have a private club named in a village law with exclusive use of village property. You can have a license agreement, and that's what you have, and that's what I expect will continue. But I'm not going to lie to you, if yes, most of the residents said, we don't like this club anymore and we want to form this club, this board could license the Weewa Lake property to another club. That's true, but that was always true, even if this law stayed the way it was written.
And I think it's probably named there because the beach club was in existence before the village was. And
I agree, and there's been plenty of things in laws that, won't be upheld, but they were in there, and I pointed out to the village that it shouldn't be in there that way, that it was improper. And it wasn't to get rid of the Weewa Beach Club, it was just to say, let's fix the law, and whoever you decide, because the problem was, of course, if they licensed to somebody else, the Weewa Beach Club would come and say, wait a minute, this law says it must be us. And that wouldn't be upheld, but this just dispenses with the problem. It's whoever, that's just the nature of, competitive process. If there's another club that does arise and say, we can do a better job, yeah, the village could say, we're going to license this lake to you because you can do a better job. But that's not the intent here. And it's not, we don't need to amend this law to do that. We could do that today. We could have done that last year as a village. We don't need the law. But the point was, let's fix it. You should just say, whoever that club is, that's who's going to run the property. And all the other issues are within the license agreement that the mayor touched on. And that's part of the negotiation going forward. And whatever happens, will continue. There is no other club right now. I can tell you that, unless the board knows something I don't. There's nobody else looking to license the Weewa. It was just to really fix the law to make it the way it should be. To just say, whoever the club is, the club is.
Then why not sign a long-term lease with them?
Well, it's not a lease, by the way. It's only a
Or
license
let's-
agreement.
Sorry, they're not sign a
Yeah,
long-term
so-
license.
That's certainly on the table.
Yeah, but for the village to do a license agreement, then, a lease versus a license agreement, they could do that. But then it has to be fair market compensation for the use of the property. Right now, it's a much lower number because it's a license agreement and the village can say to the Weewa Beach Club, yeah, we're done, we need to take it over now. If you get a lease with some kind of assurance, then the number has to go up because the village is obligated by law to get fair market value for the lease of that property. But it's not that it can't be done if that's what was the course that
And
was
for full
chosen.
disclosure, last week, someone offered the village 7 figures to buy the entire property to put a house. As a fiduciary of the village, it would be my responsibility to bring that to the board and to discuss it.
Can I ask a question about the law when it comes to that? Is it possible in New York to have a covenant that would acknowledge the relationship, which has gone over for 100 years between, the people that have been going there? I think that's why there's so much emotion with this, is because it seems like there's like a family that's being threatened. Is there some way to protect the family relationship, the familiar relationship between the Weewha Beach Club and the village that would be lawful in the state of New York to reflect what the entity is? Because that's how I feel, and I think that's how a lot of other people feel. And we want to make sure that there's security there, that something like you said, like with the 7-figure thing, would be like, not conceivable or able to be done because there was already an agreement based on this relationship that's been around for so long.
Yeah, it's a fair question, and I think, the real answer is we're talking about history and tradition versus, what the municipality has to follow by law. The answer is the only way the Weewha could have a permanent interest, the Weewha Beach Club could have a permanent interest in that property is to buy it. Because the village, as a fiduciary and owner of the property, cannot alienate that property, cannot assign it to a particular group, no matter how long they may have used it, no matter how long it may have gone on. They can't lawfully, because with all due respect to all the members of the Weewha Beach Club, there may be other people that say, look, this is our property. Why is it being given to this club exclusively? So while the Weewha Beach Club could buy it, lease it, or, pay money to use it, the only way to really have any vested interest in it long-term was the Weewha Beach Club would have to own it, just like anybody else. But otherwise, it's village property, just like any other parcel that belongs to the village. They have regulations, requirements. They can't sell property at less than fair market value. They can't lease property at less than fair market value. These are the restrictions, under state law, because ultimately this property is owned by you. When I say you, I don't mean the Weewha Beach Club. It's owned by you as the residents. And that's where the problem comes in. It's not that this board doesn't like the Weewha Beach Club or anything it stands for. It's just that I think they have to do things within the law. And so they can't give a covenant to the Weewha Beach Club for some permanent, relationship unless it was purchased. I think that's the only way that would happen.
So that's certainly something this board would consider.
You realize that pond, or the Weewha, is a backup drinking water.
Correct.
And by law, you're not supposed to build anything within 100 feet of the water.
We also have a BZA that gives variances, but yes, I'm aware of that.
Yeah, well, they shouldn't give that one, I know, because I.
You were on it, right?
Vouch for that. We didn't give up our rights for. She was the chairman.
Tom Salerno, the next name on the list.
You've answered most of my questions. I just came this evening just to listen. I'm past president of the Weewha Beach Club. I've been here since 1947. Everything seems to be running really smooth. Just want to thank Jeff and his crew for the job they do. Thank you.
Timing, because we're in the middle of negotiating the contract.
All right, can I take it back?
All right, anyone else?
Mary Gretzer.
Mary?
I'm gonna withdraw my time at the moment, because I know you're gonna tell me that it's not what the law is about. But I'm a little reluctant to do that, because I'm not sure I'll ever get a chance to say this stuff again.
Please,
Please what?
proceed.
Do it without my mask, because I can't
Mary,
understand.
if you want to stay there, it might be better because the people on the phone might hear you better if you want to stay there.
I've been fully vaccinated, so. I'm happy to
So
take
you're a
it.
spreader.
Not for more than the next 2 minutes. There's a lot of history present in the Weewaa Beach Club. For openers, it was founded in 1934, 18 years before the village of Tuxedo Park was incorporated in 1952. When it was founded, membership was open to anyone living in Tuxedo Park, as well as people from the hamlet section of the town of Tuxedo. Many of those people and their relatives had helped build Tuxedo Park, and the opportunity to come into the park and enjoy the beach and the Weewaa Lake was a thank you to them for all that they've done. Obviously, those original members are not around anymore, but some of their descendants are, and many of the people from the hamlet still work here in the park, as well as being the backbone of the volunteer ambulance corps and the fire department. I'm not sure what we'd do without those two organizations. When I first moved here almost 50 years ago, I didn't join the beach. I was pregnant with my first child. My husband had grown up here, and we went the route that so many others went. We joined the club and sent our kids to TPS. My kids often wanted to swim at the beach, but we decided that paying for TPS and the club was more than enough and didn't join. I changed my mind though, and was almost instantly sorry that I had waited so long. The WWBC is a welcoming place. I didn't know many members when I first joined, but people were friendly, and I soon had quite a few new friends. I went on to join the executive committee and ended up running the membership for about 10 years. One of the things that I've always loved about the WWBC is it's the only place in town, and not just the village, all the town, where residents of both the village and the town can get together and get to know each other and make friends. And I firmly believe that we could do well with more of that kind of thing here in Tuxedo. If the village passes this law and turns WWBC into the Weewaa Lake and Bathing Beach, I'm not sure what will happen. For openers, the mayor insisted the village would take over all the finances. I have to ask why. I don't think the club has mismanaged the finances. The only reason I can come up with is that they're thinking of raising the dues and maybe substantially. This might well price out future members from the hamlet and also some from the park. To my mind, that would not be a good thing. Having been involved for many years, I can tell you that the most involved members, the ones who basically did all the work, were those from the hamlet. After having run the club well for as long as they did, it would be a real slap in the face, I feel, to make it financially impossible for them to continue being members. The WWBC doesn't do any harm to people living in Tuxedo Park. There are not a gazillion cars racing through the park to get to the beach. Members are not throwing trash out of their car windows. I don't think they regularly make a whole lot of noise. This year, the BOT said that only people living in the hamlet who were members of the club 2 years ago could join. Think about the last couple of years. 2 years ago, there was little or no water in the Weewaa due to dam construction, and then came the pandemic. Many longtime members chose not to join under those circumstances, and now when they'd like to come back, they're being told no. That's just not right. Membership in the WWBC has always been open to residents of the park, so that wouldn't change under the new law. But the club might be missing one of the great benefits it brings, the ability to interact on an equal basis with friends and neighbors from another part of town. That won't hurt you or your children. Please don't do this. The park doesn't need another exclusive club. Please don't take away the one opportunity people have to mingle with and get to know their neighbors from the hamlet.
Thank you. Anyone else? Be it resolved, the Board of Trustees, Can I point
out
something?
Oh,
Oh, okay, let's go with the, do we have anyone on the phone that would like to make a comment? I apologize, I actually didn't think of it. Yeah, who's on?
Yeah, my name is Omar Delgado.
Okay, hi Omar, how are you? It's Mayor McFadden.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to say, to the last person that spoke, could a similar argument be also raised about the Tuxedo Club not being, affordable for, I mean, I know this is a separate issue, but it seems that, I don't know who owns the Tuxedo Club or if it's part of the, if the village actually owns the land, but if there are similar,
Okay.
arrangements,
So the village Tuxedo Club is owned on, it's a private club. And let's try and address only the local law, please, as we're winding down this public hearing.
okay.
But they do own that
Okay.
property too.
All right, so then my second question I have is there any verification as to who the Eagle Pass or the Eagle Valley members are? Do they verify the addresses?
Yes,
Do they all, oh, they do, okay.
Yes.
And do they also verify if somebody is coming in as a guest,
yes,
if the actual Eagle Valley, okay,
no,
that's it.
all of it is currently regulated under their current lease agreement to the best of everyone's ability.
Okay,
All right, thank
all
you.
right, thank you.
Anyone else on the call?
Yes, I would, this is Jen Darling.
Hi, how are you?
I'm speaking as hi, I'm speaking as a resident and I am also the Weewaa Beach Club Vice President, but I am at this time speaking as a resident. I just want to be clear about that. So I understand the change of removing the Weewaa from the local law. What I'm concerned about is that over this past season, we've had several Port residents either come down to the beach while the checkers are there or the beach manager is there, or I've had residents reach out to me insisting that they're allowed to swim at the Weewaa without being a member. And this law, my only issue here as a resident is that the law is not clear. It doesn't specifically state that the purpose of the law is not to govern who may and may not swim at the Weewaa. And that I have an issue with that because we have people swimming before hours, we have people swimming after hours. There are liability issues, there are insurance issues, and from a resident perspective, I just would like the law to be clear.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna do it in a local law, but we could do that by enforcement. If your checkers have that experience, they should call the police immediately. And also, I can ask the chief I can have him do patrols. This is not a local law issue. It's an enforcement issue.
But it is for me, because as a resident, when I read it, it is not clear to me if it's allowing residents to swim in the Weewaa. I would like the preamble to state that this law is not in fact governing who may and may not swim at the Weewaa.
Well, you have a licensing agreement and that only allows for people to
This is
swim.
not about the Weewaa. This is about me as a private resident, and is my right to make this, to state this. I feel that the preamble should be clarified, to say that the law is not about who can and cannot swim at the Weewaa. It does not allow people to swim at the Weewaa.
Okay, thank
That's the
you.
intention. That's what I'd like to say.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else on the call? Yes, Juliet.
Sorry, I lost the call in a second.
Is there anyone else on the phone that would like to make a comment?
This is just a comment on the local law, correct, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Be resolved that the Board of Trustees close the public hearing on local law 1 of 2021, a local law to repeal and replace a local law to amend, thank you, a local law to amend the rules and regulations applicable to the Weewa Lake under section 65(4). May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, the public hearing is adjourned. And we're gonna take a 2-minute break and then we'll start the regular meeting.
Are we continuing or?
No, everyone had, right,
Yeah, I would just close it, make a motion to close it.
close the public hearing.
Yes.
Yes, I thought I did, to close the public hearing, then I adjourned.
Voted, okay, sorry.
Mhm. All right, so listen, we have some guests tonight.
That would be helpful.
Yes, very nice.
That's
what I
right.
said. But I'd love to go now.
Part of the public hearing. Okay.
Just right away.
Yeah.
After we open.
Ellen is awful, and so I'm going to. And she replied and thank you for being too attentive. So now, she felt really clear and at all times.
John, can you help me with my document, please? All right, what I'm looking for is the MAC notes.
Yeah, they're right
They're called the McNotes.
They're right there.
They can place them. And also the sheet of resolutions that I wrote today.
Right here. They're all here. I mean, really.
Thank you. Are they in? Are these? No.
Is that not it?
These are other resolutions.
I didn't feel like I could take it any longer, but I hope you would do something about
I
it.
see. Okay. Now, I'd like an agenda. Right. I'd like an agenda, that's number one. And then I also, thank you. And then I also sent out a list of resolutions I wrote today. If someone knows where those are. Okay, thank you. John, can you move it?
And it's a very classy looking, it's not ostentatious or,
Yes.
well done. And-
No.
and
No,
Jason
those are the back notes.
deserves to have
Those are the
it.
McNotes, which I have here. Those are the McNotes.
Do it again. Stubborn bitch.
Yes, we do.
You do. You know, they go in and now they stand by it.
Absolutely.
That's all. Becomes more important because you're here now.
So you don't have,
Right in the building, right next to it, where you can't see it. It's crazy.
I do. I got something leaked.
That has to sting a
I
little
think I
bit.
printed it. It does.
mhm.
Other people may not get that day, but I do. Oh, Jesus, I forgot to turn that off.
Yes, that's exactly, thank you. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Oh. Wyoming this week.
Emailed late.
Yeah, so.
Correct. Perfect, thank you, gentlemen.
Oh, have you ever been there?
Okay, so it
Get a chance.
is
Oh, it's just crazy.
6:50. No, this is old. That's old.
Oh, really?
This is May. But I've got it. All right, so it's 7:50. I'd like to call the regular meeting to order. Let's rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please. Present.
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 Thank you very much. All right, so I see we have members of the esteemed DPW here. And the DPW, the union, and also the DPW supervisor, Jeff Voss. And we are considering the DPW contract this evening during executive session. And today I was speaking with the gentleman who requested coming by and making a presentation to the board, which I thought was a terrific idea. And after I begged him not to, I agreed. And so I thought I would give up my mayor's comment section today to have them present so they can go back to their families in a reasonable hour. So however you'd like to take the floor.
Mr. Mayor, we do have is it okay if I pull the mask down?
It's up to you.
A little bit of a grievance with our contract. We find it a little unfair. We are jumping from job to job. We're working at our job description. People retired, we jump into their spot just to save the jobs and stuff. Find it more or less what you're offering a slap in the face to us. We work hard. We try to make things nice around here. And for the most part, to offer what we have or what you're offering, and to take away days is more or less a slap in the face. I hope you can rectify this. And that's about all we want to say. You guys want to say anything?
If you don't mind, a couple questions. We were talking earlier today about using your own equipment.
Right.
Does anyone want to comment on that?
Most of the equipment is from other guys, supplies and stuff. I know Danny brings his own equipment in. If it wasn't for him, stuff wouldn't get done. Mr. Scalini over here, he's donated all kinds of metal for the police booth. What time I've spent over at the shop and then over to the sewer plant. Other guys had to pick up time to back us up or me up or anybody else. Somebody needs help, we drop what we're doing, we go and help, come back, do our work. And for what we were asking was not out of the question. I just feel that it's more or less a slap in the face to us.
Just for the people in the audience, the original request was 3% plus from the union.
And it was negotiable.
Right, and we
negotiable.
returned with 2.
No,
And
1 and 4. Oh, you turned 1, 2, correct.
And then the boards changed.
Right.
And there was a new offer, which included also reduction of double time.
Correct.
So let's talk about that too. So you made an argument today.
Correct.
About how often that's used.
Correct.
And the extent of it. That would be very helpful for the board members to understand when that's used and approximately how much it costs a year.
I think we had figured out 3 days, was it 3 days we had to go of, so 5 days last year. 5 days last year used the double time. And that was approximately.
I think overall, there was about
Overall-
43 or 45,000 of overtime total for the year.
Correct.
With the exception of some of that, which was a choice in the contract of using what was higher, the regular pay or the time and a half.
Right.
And so some of that's included in the regular payroll, so I couldn't get it all. But let's just say it's 55,000.
Okay.
All right, and it's very helpful for the board to have that scope. Because when you look at the contract and you read things like double time, it's interesting, it's good to put it into context. So I appreciate you doing that this evening. And if I'm wrong, let me know, but I believe it's only in cases where there's sewer or a sewer break, water main break.
Right.
Or a snowstorm.
Correct.
On a Sunday night, for example.
Exactly.
These are not, I know that as long as I've been mayor, Jeff has never come to me and said, we want double overtime for something that has nothing to do with that.
Correct.
No, it's only, the only time they get double time is emergency. That's the only time they get overtime. It's not,
Mhm.
you know, it's not like I call them in to blow leaves around. It's a water main break, a
Exactly.
snowstorm, ice storm,
that's
you
it.
know.
Very helpful. So one of the other questions that the board had was, why would the increase be 3%, let's say, your original ask, which I know is negotiable? Why was the other one 1% the year before, let's say, your last contract? Why was that so low? So I thought you'd like to have an opportunity. Yeah.
Mary Jo approached us about the dam.
Mhm.
And if we took that because she made a, let's think about it as far as the money towards the dam.
In other words, somebody had to take the hit
Right,
and you guys took the hit.
right.
Did she make any promises about what would happen in the future?
Yeah. Sure she did.
Because one of the, I appreciate you sharing that information. One of the questions the board has was, you know, to go from a 1, why are we going up to 2 or 3 or whatever the case might be?
Exactly, and understandably so, and we had negotiated with that, we bent for her.
Mhm.
You know, it's like we weren't gonna stick to our guns, we worked together.
Well, a couple things I'll just say that we'll discuss it in detail and potentially some of the board members have questions. I've been working closely with you guys for quite a while. And, you know, I have construction and architecture background, supervision background, project management background. I'm very impressed with what I see. And I don't want you guys to feel slighted. And I have a position that I'll represent during executive session. And I just wanted to share that with you. I find you guys to be completely valuable, major return on investment. I know Chris and I have talked at length about the police department and the DPW bringing value to the proposition of living here. Which is one of the reasons in the new website, I'm showcasing the DPW and the police department. May not or may not have seen it, but and the work you do. And I've made a point of complimenting you in front of the entire community for the work you do, which I find to be above satisfactory. Including the diversity that the group has, whether it's jumping to masonry, from painting to excavation, to snow removal, to landscaping. It's a very impressive group. I'll just make one point. I recently discovered an old original flower bed in front of the lodge on the front lawn. And it was crumbling, the stone was crumbling. And I wanted to rebuild it, so I got some prices. And they totaled around $14,000. So obviously, we couldn't do it. But I asked the DPW to step in and do it. They did it in 2.5 days. And we reused extra granite from the dam that we overpurchased, apparently. And I can personally say that these guys will step up and do anything you ask them to do within their power and ability. Do you have any questions for the DPW?
Don't have any questions, just want to thank, go ahead.
You say that, we appreciate it, but then you want to take days away from us?
I think we'll be discussing those things tonight. I think one of the positive things about you being here is to share with this group your views. And all the things that we discussed are negotiable.
Mayor, can I just say something too? I mean, since we're bringing this out in public and saying it's a slap in the face, what was agreed to in the last contract by the DPW was actually less than the offer that's on the table right now from the village. And there were very similar proposals, very much the same as what's on the table now. So, you know, in fairness, I don't think it's right to say it's a slap in the face. I was part of the prior negotiations, and the raises that were actually agreed to were less than what's a initial proposal right now from the village. So I think that's a positive sign. It's better than what ultimately was agreed to in the last contract.
Thank you, Brian.
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for coming in tonight. This is very helpful.
You're welcome. Thank you.
As a resident, I just think they do a hell of a job, especially in the winter.
I think there's two things in the village that people are willing to pay for in taxes, as long as it's fair. And that's the police department and the DPW. And I think it makes our community.
Agreed.
All right, guys, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. Oh, I had my own. Yeah, I just, okay, thank you very much. Okay, so, gentlemen, and Tinka, we had reports submitted throughout the week that we've all read. And we also have minutes that were proposed. Does anyone have any comments or questions about that, or like to give a oral liaison report? So that said, I'm going to recommend that we accept these into the record. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees accept into the record the reports and approve the minutes presented in today's agenda, August 18th, 2021. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Public comments?
Mr. Mayor, Dennis Lynch, I was first up on the agenda, I believe, when I called in.
Okay, Dennis. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. I did communicate tonight with the mayor by email. Just want to read into the record what I did. It's a very short 30-second statement. It goes to the mayor. It says the undersigned is retained by Claudio Ganazzi Bissati. The agenda for this evening's meeting incorrectly states that my client was making an offer to purchase this property for use as a park or otherwise for public access to the lake. The terms of the letter sent by my client and his offer speak for itself. Nowhere in that letter is there any indication of the offer being made for the purposes stated in the agenda. While the stated price in that letter remains as indicated, there was nothing in that letter indicating any further purpose for the purchase other than for private property to be owned and used by my client. Your village records should reflect that accordingly. Please be guided accordingly. Mr. Mayor, that was what I sent you today. If there's any questions, but under no circumstance was the letter of June of this year indicating other than the purchase price or of $150,000. And I'll close by quoting you and your attorney. You talked about, being competitive when we are negotiating. I kind of find it somewhat disconcerting that the purchase offer by my client was listed on the agenda and Mr. McFadden's purchase offer, if any, was not. And the last thing I'm going to quote your attorney about fair market value when you talk about the license. There's no way this village can properly consider any type of offer without getting a fair market value appraisal. So I would bring that to your attention. I'm here for any questions you may have. And for the record, I'm not waiving my right to claim legal the fact that during early portions of it and throughout it, it has been impossible for people on this call to hear all the comments. I want to thank you for your time, Mayor.
Thank you, Attorney Lynch. You and I have a history. It's good to hear from you again. The actual,
Always a pleasure hearing from you.
yeah, the comments about the park we're making in the public record in the past. We'll be happy to look them up for you.
Actually, Mayor, I can tell you the letter of interest received in June of 2021 from Mr. Guazzoni was a renewed letter of interest referencing his November 18th, 2020 letter of interest, which said, this proposal springs from a plan I'm developing to transform this unused parcel of land into a public park for all residents of Tuxedo Park when walking around Tuttle.
That's what I thought. So anyway,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
I couldn't hear a word. I could not hear a word that was being said by the village attorney. That's the problem with this.
Okay, well, why don't you hold on and I'll ask him to come close to the microphone.
Yeah, so the letter from June 20th, 21 was a renewed letter of interest citing to a November of 2020 letter, which said this proposal, this is from Mr. Guazzoni on November 18th, 2020. This proposal springs from a plan I am developing to transform this unused parcel of land into a public park for all residents of Tuxedo Park when walking around Tuxedo Lake.
Well, that would be fine if the June 21st letter said that, Mr. Nugent, but you know it did. And to suggest that a June 21st letter that doesn't mention that springs from the past, I think is less than being candid.
Yeah, I think the letters speak for themselves, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Lynch.
Thank you, Mayor. for your time.
You're welcome. So the reference is that an offer was made for some property, $150,000. And the village board identified a spot at the south end of the lake and suggested to Mr. Guazzoni that that would be something he might consider rather than the property that the Maddens are looking at, because we've been advised by our attorney that that property cannot be sold to anyone but Madden because of the fact that it's in between two existing Madden-owned properties. So we like the idea of a park. And we would love Mr. Guazzoni to give the village $150,000 for the south end of the lake, a small piece of property the village owns there, under the conditions that it be made into a permanent park with restrictions. So that's the discussion. Okay.
Mayor, I want to clarify, and assuming the parties are still on the phone, the reason the lot can't be sold isn't because Madden owns the adjoining parcels. It's because in order to sell to somebody else, you would have to create a non-conforming illegal lot permanently, because right now that portion of property is not a lot. It is part of an existing village road, partially dedicated as a road, now partially discontinued, but it's all one lot. In order to sell it to somebody else, we would have to create an illegal lot permanently in the village to sell it to somebody else. So I just want to put that correct.
I stand corrected. Thank
Mr.
you.
Nugent, I appreciate you clarifying what the mayor said, but you didn't. The mayor said what he said about Mr. McFadden. The record stands for itself.
Thank you.
It's good. Okay. Any other comments from the phone or in the room, please?
Mayor, may I speak? This is Chilean Hempel.
Yes. Hi, Chian. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm sorry I can't join everybody in person. I hope if anybody can't hear me, please interrupt and let me
We
know.
can hear you well.
I'd like to, yeah, thank you. I'd like to make some comments on behalf of the Tree Advisory Board in relation to actually 3 agenda items. So I hope I have a little bit more time than just 2 minutes, just a little bit more. The first comment is in relation to the DPW. The DPW guys have been absolutely terrific and supportive of the Tree Advisory Board. And they have, sort of mow grass, they've built steps. And I agree with the mayor. They can do about just about anything that you ask them to do, and they do it with enthusiasm. So I just want to sort of say that for everybody to take note of. Secondly, is I'd like to comment on the agenda item about Mayor McFadden becoming the liaison of the Tree Advisory Board. We really welcome him to become our liaison, and we look forward to working with him, and we hope that the Board of Trustees will approve this appointment. Third, I'd like to sort of comment on the item about vegetative barriers on lakes and streams, with specific reference to the recent site work done at the southern end of Tuxedo Lake. There, I think a lot of people will notice that we removed much of the undergrowth shrubbery, the ground cover, including moss, lichen, and a good number of trees, both dead and alive, and their roots, and scores of native plants that the Tree Advisory Board received free of charge from the DEC's Tree Retreat program and planted there in October 2016 were also inadvertently removed. The area now looks much more groomed, so to speak, and we can see more of the Tuxedo Lake. And some residents may find this clearing much more aesthetic, but there are actually some serious adverse environmental consequences. This is because Tuxedo Lake is our reservoir, and all the land surrounding the shoreline is actually a sensitive ecological zone. The water drains down from all the surrounding hills, and it is purified there through a very complex filtering process even an underground fungal network. When this natural filtering mechanism or process is damaged or impaired in any way, water enters the reservoir packed with impurities and excessive mineral nutrients, including phosphorus, which encourages the growth of invasive aquatic species such as milfoil. This is the reason why the DEC advises that a vegetative buffer of between 25 to 30 feet should be maintained around a reservoir or a lake, and it established the Trees for Trips program that I mentioned earlier to help communities to plant natural buffers to enhance this filtering system. So in the last 5 years, the tree board, under the guidance of the DEC, have actually planted buffers at the southern end of Tuxedo Lake, at Augusta Brook, behind the Garden Club plantings, and at the DPW site at the Weewa Bank embankment. We understand that the plan is to landscape the clearing. Looking at the work of such naturalist landscape architects like Larry Wiener, who designed our racetrack, and also the Library of Congress Packard campus, or Piet Oudolf, who designed the Highline Park, or Marjorie Ruddick, who designed the Queen's Park, Queen's Plaza at New York, and indeed, she's the architect of the garden at number 2 Rich Road in Tuxedo Park. We know that aesthetics can actually work harmoniously with environmental preservation. So, taking lessons from their work, the tree board suggests that the village replant that southern end of Tuxedo Lake as a native vegetative buffer comprising of native shrubbery that can thrive in the wet and shady conditions of the site much better than any garden variety plant, and they would be just as beautiful, or even more so. The tree board also advises against using bluegrass or lawn grass as a landscaping element, because these grasses have very shallow roots and they don't really provide any water filtering whatsoever. We also advise against using topsoil, because counterintuitively, topsoil, when added to existing soil, actually disrupts the soil and harms plant life. Hardscapes, such as stone pavers, tar and chips, road, asphalt, and so on and so forth, would include runoff of unfiltered water into the reservoir, and therefore not a good idea. And very important, as much as possible, please avoid construction, like building a gazebo, a broad walk, or a retaining wall, whatever, because excavation or a foundation would just cause sediments to flow into the water, further damage the water filtering system, promote invasive, and destroy the delicate underground network of fungi that plants use to absorb nutrients for their plant growth. And these very same nutrients are the phosphorus and nitrogen that we don't want in any excessive amount in our water. But overall, I think shoreline vegetative buffer is a very, very beneficial thing to have around Tuxedo Lake. It would reduce nutrient inflow, it stabilizes the shoreline, and provide a wildlife habitat. But a lot of you may not know, the natural beauty, not groomed and cultivated beauty of a garden, of a formal garden, actually underlies the basis of our historical landmark designation. Because it's not just our historic houses that the National Register of Historic Places say, wow, that's why we want Tuxedo Park on our listing. It's also the natural landscape in which these houses are located that gives us the listing on the National Register. So let us not destroy the natural landscape. We are not a park, even though we have a name park in our name. We're not Central Park. We're much wilder than that. For the sake of our environment, for the sake of wildlife, for the sake of our natural listing, I think we should really be serious about thinking, revegetating our shoreline and reverse decades of progressive deforestation. I will be sending, on behalf of the tree board, a memo to the Board of Trustees to support the document, to support our comments tonight. And this document will include many very helpful illustrations and photographs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you on that.
Same, likewise.
Okay. Any other comments from the in-person audience or the phone? Last.
Ian's comments on behalf of the tree board. I think in addition to your planning there, I think we should also consider like traffic and not have any cars anywhere near the vegetation, stay on the streets. And I think human traffic should be kept away from the water and the plant growth that we keep, hopefully within 25 feet of the lakes.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, thank you. We're going to close the public comment period and move on to the consent agenda. First, let me ask any of the trustees if they have any items they'd like me to take out.
I don't.
Tinka? No?
No.
Be it resolved, the Board of Trustees approve the consent agenda items, letters A through I described within this evening's consent agenda as part of the BOT regular meeting agenda dated August 18th, 2021. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Old business. Okay, so we have the local law. We closed the public hearing. Some suggestions were made. I am satisfied with what the village attorney's response were. I think that the majority, if not almost 100% of the comments made relate to the discussion of the next agreement with the Weewa Beach Club. I think we're right on course. I think this is part of that. We have a committee that we formed with the Weewa Beach Club Executive Committee group and we haven't had our first meeting yet. We've sort of picked out people on the village side. The goal is to work towards a co-management existence for the next season. And I hope that we can all negotiate in good faith. I think that it's important based on the attorney's recommendation alone that this is illegal, that we have no choice but to move forward with this. And if we would like to add something, Chris, that would clarify the fact that people shouldn't take this as swimming, we could do that by resolution afterwards, Brian?
In terms of the rules or the?
Well, I mean, I think there's some concern that people are going to swim. They're going to misinterpret this. So can't we say, what do you thought? What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I thought the language was actually pretty clear because I think the swimming at that site is governed by the licensing agreement, and that's what prohibits people from swimming at that site. So I think this law, all this, as I understand it, all that we've done is fixed a problem with a law that was never enforceable. So we haven't changed language other than take out the fact that you're not identifying a specific corporation because we can't. And so the reality is, to your point, like this whole discussion tonight really is better left for our committee and the Weewa Beach Club to figure out the licensing agreement going forward. I don't think anything's changed other than we've.
Well, one of the ironies is that the Weewa Beach Club referenced the fact that we have this law, and therefore we wouldn't have time to actually have a legitimate discussion about co-managing because we wouldn't be able to change the law in time. So we looked into the law and then found out that it was not an enforceable law.
But what it turns out is it doesn't actually matter. It's not
Right.
enforceable.
Right. So Chris, do you have any comments?
Yeah, so I want to thank the public who came out tonight and voiced their opinion. Obviously, this is an important issue that we want Beach Club and swimming pool there. My comments on the law specifically are, I look at it as technical, doesn't really change any of the relationships that we have right now. But I do think some of the comments that people brought up regarding confusion, because we did insert the property owners and residents who don't necessarily live at the WeWa, and they've already had problems based on the discussions in the spring, that I would just ask that the chief make sure that all the officers are aware what the rules are, so when the WeWa Beach Club calls, there's clarity of who's supposed to be there and who can't. And I think we should look into make sure that the signage is appropriate as far as who can swim when, where. Earlier tonight, I looked at the regulations regarding state law regarding swimming areas and parks. It does say that we have to provide for adequate safeguards. And some of the fees that we charge would go to that signage and all that kind of stuff. So
that would
I
be-
think
you're saying that's
we're
on the WeWa Beach Club.
or the village. It's the village property. We can discuss who needs to do that. I just think that we have a code enforcement officer, we have a chief of police. We should look at the applicable laws.
Agreed.
And make sure that we're following it, making it clear to the public who
this the-
can use it and when, and where. That's all.
I
But I have no issues with the law. I just think that a lot of comments came up and, we should take some of their points to see what we can address right now.
I agree.
Completely agree.
Okay, so any questions before I read the resolution? Resolution adopting local law number 1 of 2021, amending the village code regarding WeWa Lake regulations. Whereas the Village of Tuxedo Park, Village Board, pursuant to the New York State Municipal Home Rule, Law number 10, is authorized to adopt local laws, and whereas the Village Board desires to amend Chapter 65 of the Village Code regarding rules and regulations applicable to the WeWa Lake, quote, local law amendments, end quote, and semicolon, and whereas the Village Board duly noted and held a public hearing on August 18th, 2021 at 6:45 PM to consider the local law amendment, and whereas all persons interested in commenting on such local law amendments were afforded the opportunity to be heard. Now therefore be it resolved that Section 1, the above whereas clauses are incorporated herein by reference as if set forth fully herein. Section 2, the local law amending Chapter 65, rules and regulations applicable to the WeWa Lake, and is hereby adopted as local law number 1 of 2021 of the Village of Tuxedo Park on August 18th, 2021. Section 3, the village clerk shall cause such local law to be filed with the Secretary of State, as well as being made part of the Village Board of Minutes, Village Board minutes, and any code book maintained by the village. Section 4, this resolution shall be effective immediately. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I think you skipped section 2. I'm just kidding.
Chris Casper is no longer.
Gotcha.
All right, so, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you. Moving along. Consent agenda is done. Old business passage. Dash, okay. So dash, diver assisted suction harvesting. It was brought up recently by a resident that the prior board had, at least during a meeting, potentially committed to pulling out some of the milfoil in the WeWa Lake. We did some earlier in the season, and now is an opportunity to continue with that. In the meantime, we approved recently the use of herbicide in all 3 bodies of water. And because of the season ending, and because the DEC is several months behind in giving the special permit required to apply herbicide, that has been put off till next year. So it occurred to me that it's at least worth discussing with the board as to whether or not it's worthwhile spending that $6,000 or $7,000 or $3,000 now on pulling out the milfoil with the dash process or simply put it off till, and put it off for 2021. And use the herbicide instead, saving that money into the budget for potentially other uses. So that sets the stage. Does anyone care to comment?
So it seems to make sense that it's late in the season and it's appropriate to put it off. However, I don't know anything about anything, and I think it's worth a recommendation from our lakes manager, AJ, if he can at least outline some unthought of repercussions if we do.
Right. So in my initial response to the resident, I asked for his opinion, and he agrees that it's not harmful to put it off. In fact, it's prudent.
It seems like a logical decision to postpone. Since we're putting the herbicides in, not a good use of money.
Tinka?
I agree.
Brian? Now, I don't recall if we actually approved this in the budget, whereas we approved a lake amount in the budget. So do we need a resolution to postpone this since the contract was never signed?
Not the one signed. Just don't go forward with it.
Did we sign a contract, Tinka?
No, I don't think we signed a contract, but we just, put some monies in, I think, for the dash. We'll split it between both. The water.
We put money aside, but didn't sign any
Right,
contract.
so we voted for a category of lake management, but not, okay. So there's no required resolution, thank you. Okay, I think that item C regarding the $150,000 purchase, we've spoke to that enough this evening. We had an attorney representing Claudio Guazzoni make a comment. So I think we'll, without objection from the board, we'll table that discussion.
That's fine.
Okay, now, however, the fact that we've recently been advised, as Brian put it eloquently earlier, moments ago, about creating an illegal lot, that brings back the offer that was made by the Maddens to purchase the village property that adjoins their two lots. And to that end, I asked Brian to write a resolution, a conditional resolution, because there were many things that need to take place before we could actually execute a sale. And if anyone has that handy, I will read it. The town supervisor has a personal secretary for 50 grand a year. I'm just saying. I have nothing. I have me.
And you want a salary too.
Damn right. Damn right. I work very hard. But you know what? Maybe there's a reason that we shouldn't do it, because like maybe when you walk through the gates, we look great in top hats. Or we invented a tuxedo. Or we're all gentlemen farmers. That flew one day. Yeah.
One of my other jobs,
Is that it?
one of the
Up front
council
here?
persons of the town of Tuxedo, and yes, the supervisor has a salary and has a secretary who has a salary. And that is a budget item that we vote on every year and approve. And
Yeah.
so it's certainly within the purview of this board to vote themselves stipends or hire additional staff. That is part of the budget process, and
So we have a resident recommending it for me to put it on the.
We are not doing that
I
tonight.
said that you could do it.
Thank you very much.
And
I appreciate that.
Did you get your resolution?
Yeah, I have it. I think, let me just double check.
Yeah.
Conveyance of village property. Or consider conveyance at the top.
Starts at the
Consider
bottom.
conveyance, yep.
Thank you. A resolution authorizing the mayor to proceed with necessary steps to consider the conveyance of village property. Whereas, as the village of Tuxedo Park previously discontinued a portion of a paper road running of East Lake Road, described as a portion of an unnamed paper road parcel approximately 1,550 square feet and between tax parcels, section 106, block 1, lot 1, and section 105, block 1, lot 30, beginning from Tuxedo Lake and running east to a point approximately 100 feet easterly, the property, and by resolution of the village board dated December 16th, 2020. And whereas the village board has determined that the village no longer requires the property for village purposes and desires to convey the property, and whereas on February 24th, 2021, LCTP Real Estate, LLC, has conveyed an offer to purchase the property for $25,000. Whereas the village desires to proceed with consideration of such offer, now therefore be it resolved that section 1, the above whereas clauses shall be incorporated by reference as if set forth in full herein. Section 2, the village board hereby authorizes the mayor and village council to begin the process of negotiating a contract of sale and any other documents necessary to convey the property to LCTP, subject to final approval of the terms and conditions of such contract of the sale by the village board and authorization of the board to execute such documents. Section 3, any such proposed conveyance of the property shall be subject to the following conditions, which may, as determined applicable by village legal counsel, also be incorporated into any final contract of sale. A, an appraisal of the property to confirm that the offer conveyed by LCTP is equal to or greater than the fair market value of the property. And B, acceptance by the village board of a final offer from LCTP with terms and conditions satisfactory to the village board. C, submission to the village of meets and bounds description of the property prepared by a licensed surveyor at the expense of LCTP. D, necessary approvals of any boards in the village to allow LCTP to simultaneously create a lot consisting of the property and to merge such lot into the abutting property owned by LCTP, which approvals shall be contingent on the merger of the lot into the abutting LCTP lot. Any such approvals shall provide that the lot and merger shall be deemed effective only upon the closing of title of the property. E, LCTP shall be responsible for the payment of the expenses incurred by the village and its professionals and any such approvals and the conveyance of the property. F, in the event that any litigation is instituted against the village arising from the proposed conveyance of property, LCTP shall defend and indemnify the village with respect to any such claims, or in the event that LCTP declines to do so, the village may cease any further proceedings with respect to the conveyance of the property, and LCTP shall have no recourse or remedy against the village. Section 4, the mayor and any other official, employee, or consultant as directed by the mayor is hereby authorized to take any and all necessary actions to carry out the provisions of this resolution. Section 5, this resolution shall be effective immediately. May I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? Brian, do you want to make any comments?
Nope, you covered it.
Comment?
You got any questions?
Please,
I can
yeah.
address.
So just from my perspective, I'm satisfied with the terms and conditions. There's a whole lot on the purchaser that they have to come up with. The board still gets another swing at this once all of that is done. A recollection from the public hearing on the discontinuance of the public road, unnamed road, was nobody ever used that portion of the land. There's only really two options we can do with it. One is nothing, and the other is sell it to the person who owns one side of the 15 feet and the other side of the 15 feet. So I'm okay with.
And to be clear for the board, obviously you can read that. This is not authorization of the actual conveyance, but authorization to proceed with the negotiation on those terms and conditions. The actual conveyance will come back to the board to say, we're good with these terms and conditions, and you would authorize the mayor to then execute a contract.
Yeah. And I don't know how many people have visited the lot. It's a very steep slope, very rocky, really can't be used for anything. With the current state, nothing's happening with it, and nothing's happening with either lot on either side. And to be honest, it's an eyesore from the lake. And I think moving forward with this will help alleviate that issue. And there really is, as I've done my diligence, only there's only two potential owners, the village, and we can have status quo and an ugly lakefront there, or we can sell it to the Maddens through their corporation, and they will spend the money to harmonize that area,
Putting a vegetative buffer.
including a vegetative buffer.
No commitments. All right, I'd like to take the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Anyone against? Oh, that didn't make sense. Anyone against? Anyone opposed?
It looks, I can't hear Tinka.
I saw her.
I think she,
Hold on, do you want to say something?
you're on mute.
Talk.
You're on mute.
Yes, and the other thing is just that if the Maddens were to purchase it, they could make it a conforming lot, which there's no other way that that could be a conforming lot, so.
Correct.
Yeah, so the requirement is that the only way the sale goes through is a simultaneous merger of the created lot immediately into the adjoining lot.
Okay.
Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you. Next, we've been discussing installing an automatic gate at the front gate and the south gate. And when I've discussed it with people anecdotally, a lot of support for it. The idea would be it's like an easy pass. When you drive in, you would, within 25 feet, it recognizes your pass that maybe you put on your windshield or rear view mirror, and it opens for you. Now, if you wanted to discuss something with the police officer in the booth, you can certainly do that. Maybe we're handing out paperwork that day. We'd like you to stop. But otherwise, you'll be able to go through. Now, I think this will be a great convenience for the residents. The technology's been there for a while. I think we should do it on the south end main gate. I don't know, Mayor, if you had ever considered this.
I think it's a great idea. I don't know if it's gonna save time and how much money are we spending to do it?
Great question, because we went out and got 3 quotes. And they, and which is our responsibility under our procurement policy. It doesn't qualify for bidding. And we were very dissatisfied with the first vendor who came in at 20. AVS, the current company that does our gate arm. And they refused to give us any details. It's very expensive. I can't remember the thousands of dollars, but it's something that it would be a throwout bid to me. Then we got another one for a little bit less. And I questioned that one. Remember, Chief, I said, I've looked up these items on the internet and they don't cost that much. I don't get it. Why is it 14 grand or something like that? And then we got a third. And the third is from the company that just installed the intercom system and lights in the new booth. It's called Secure Tech Systems. And they came in labor and materials at $4,845. So there's a chance that that money will be left over from the donations made to the booth. But if not, I thought it might be something we should consider. So I called it's not something we budgeted for in the last budget. So I contacted the village accountant, Andrew Arias, and I said, look, we didn't budget this. Is it okay? You know, we have over $1 million surplus funds. Is it okay to do something like that? And he wrote back and said, absolutely, you can modify the budget. This is a legitimate question that Chris had raised. And so with that, what I wanted to discuss with the board, now I'm not ready to sign an agreement yet. There needs to be some more due diligence. I'd like to see a good plan first about transitioning, which Chris and the chief have offered to provide. Who should we offer these to? Should they go to everybody, just residents? Should they go to people that live in the community, the school, employees at the club, members of the Tuxedo Club? These are things that I think we should have understanding of before we pull the trigger. But assuming we can do that in a few meetings, what I'd like to seek this evening is the approval to pick one of these vendors. Of course, I would only do that under the condition that we all agree in between the meetings. And I just put it, to make a decision to sign one of these vendors for under $20,000, because that's the procurement number, although we wouldn't be spending that. But there's one other thing that we should discuss, and that's the cost of the tags. Each vendor presented a tag and a price based on the system they were recommending. And they range from $15 a tag to some ridiculous number. The first one, I think, was $100. So the question is, to pay for the tags, do we do a one-time charge to the village residents and say, okay, a tag is $25 to come in, and that will pay for the tags? What do you guys feel about that? And just since we're all here.
I'm not in favor of charging residents. You don't charge them for police equipment that they use to guard us, private security. I'm not.
Well, everything's taxed. Everything's taxes.
So that's why it's important to be in the budget or discuss or change the budget. I'm not in favor of writing a check just so I can come.
Every resident of the place needs to renew their very nominal fee. About $15, something like that. It literally just covers the cost of all the equipment every year to do it, because people change houses sell, and if you don't make them change it every single year, you see what happens with TP tags if you don't make them change. So this would make, if all of a sudden as of January 1 or whatever date you want to pick, your little taggy won't open the gate, then the person would have to stop and renew their membership.
One thing that's nifty is that you can program these so that, let's say someone's renting 3 months, you could give them a 3-month tag and charge for that, etc. And you can do it annually. One of the problems we have, as you just mentioned, is let's say a resident leaves, then they keep the tag. And it's really, as the chief has pointed out in his memorandum to the board, that the security suffers when that happens. So it gives you an opportunity to update and renew. Yes, ma'am. No.
Everybody pays $25 per tag. You get an app and you can tell who's coming in when. So I don't have to phone the guard and say, yes, blah, blah, blah. We actually have a physical guest card issued in the car, and it's for a limited amount of time, no matter whatever they're saying. So depending on the color and the date, that way.
You might hire a new nanny to pick up your kid at school. We can put that in.
Thank God that's gone.
Oh, I meant the editorial us.
Look at that.
Okay, thank you.
And then everybody gets an app on your phone or whatever. You can't do that then.
Brian, do you have any comment on, is it illegal, illegitimate to have the village pay a fee to cover the cost of the tag, as far as you're aware?
Not if you're issuing it. If it's required by the village, you could, they're generally taxpayers. I think the only problem would be the issuance of tags to non-taxpayers versus taxpayer. I don't know, who gets the tags, but I think that you could properly, for example, incorporate it into the residents, part of the taxes. But if there are people, and I don't know the answer to that, but if there are people that are not residents getting tags, there probably still should be a fee.
Right.
Because you shouldn't be funding outside, where the residents can be considered to pay as part of their taxes.
So potentially we could have a fee to cover the tags and then include it in next year's budget, so forth.
Yeah, it could be part of the taxes. And then anybody that isn't a resident, like if there for some reason are businesses or somebody, contractors that would get it, there should be a fee for them because they're not paying you taxes.
So right now, the plan is fees for TPS workers and parents, club members and employees, contractors, frequent flyers. That would be, I think we all agree would pay. And then,
I mean, I think that.
and then I'm still set, and I think you just said that, taxes would be what drives the purchase of the tax for the residents.
Right, you could choose to issue to the residents as part of the.
Just like we
budget.
do now, that's exactly.
Or we could charge them the first year.
Okay, and then I will wait a year, and then I'll get my tag for free the next year.
No, because we're gonna discontinue your tag. Oh,
And
however,
I'm gonna wait in line.
however,
You're not encouraging me
people
to get
have
the tag.
called me and said, we don't want to give up the tags because it's prestigious.
Oh.
Oh, come
So
on.
I was thinking, what do you think about this? If you've been here over 30 years, you get a platinum tag, and that's 30 grand. And so on and so forth. So if you want to keep your tag. No, but seriously, yes, we'll consider all of these things, Chris. Absolutely. I think it's a
I
legitimate
just want to
point.
make mention about charging residents. We have some residents, we have one in particular who gets 18 tags. She has 18 vehicles.
What?
Okay,
We're only allowed to have 4.
That's
He
insane.
gets 18 a year.
for
And
free,
there-
right, because she's a resident?
I'm sorry?
It's a resident.
We do have a
It's free,
code that says you
right,
can only have 4
there's no
cars.
charge. But
Okay,
we're
yeah,
talking,
I'm
we're
not
talking
in
a
favor of that.
$2 sticker as opposed to a $15 tag now. So
Yeah.
it's gonna get
Yeah.
expensive.
Great.
Oh, yeah, we have to pay.
So
So
two
that's
per
the issue.
household or something, and
That's-
anything above.
Yeah, you
you're
have to
paying.
earn a certain number free, and
Yeah.
after that, it's fee.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I think that's fair.
The kids in the family that have cars, I mean, you can't say two kids or just a couple, just the parents.
Well, it's whatever kid
Well, they
you
can
like
buy
the
'em.
most, gets.
Yeah.
You can give them as
Those are
stocking
jail,
stuffers
those-
and stuffers. So I think, all right, well, your input is very valuable. I think what we'll do is I'm gonna request that I get approval from the board to proceed, and that I'll get another bid. And then I'll bring information back to you. If it takes until next meeting, I'll bring it back next meeting. If I think I have something solid for you and I have a plan from Chris and the chief, then I'll bring it to you beforehand. Otherwise, we'll do that. So we might as well pass it. And if it-
Do you want to read the resolution and have more discussion? 'Cause I
Yeah.
have some.
Yeah.
So.
Sure.
Or-
You want me to read it? Or do you
No,
want to have
I'm
discussion
fine with
now?
having discussion now.
Yeah.
So right now, we have 3 bids, and it looks like we're leaning towards taking lowest cost, not best value.
I didn't say that.
Well, that's
You,
my
I mean, I
understanding from talking to you today.
You
One
mean
of the things-
emailing?
I talked to the chief,
Oh, talking to the chief.
yes.
Yeah.
So,
They said talk to me.
what I want to hear is a client of one of these vendors who said this is the best thing we ever did
Mhm.
to reassure us, as opposed to calling a client and say, this is the worst thing we ever did. We spent $20,000. It takes too long. It breaks down all the damn time, and everybody's pissed off.
Kind of like the South Gate.
So my understanding is the vendor, SecureTech, has never installed this, and we don't have a client we can call to say, hey, how did you enjoy their service? So that alone is a throwaway to me. Unless we get some guarantees that you will get all your money back, not 100% satisfied. or
So
95%
there is another
satisfied.
part of that story. The company partner broke away from a much larger firm who's done tons of these installations. Just saying.
Okay, then
And he does guarantee, the first year is 100% guarantee on all parts and all.
does he have a comparable system that somebody's using that we can call and ask them how the transition went
Well,
and how it currently
I think
flows in your
I think I've covered your concerns by just getting the authority to sign something with your approval. No, another conditional thing.
This is another, I think it's another exploratory.
Right.
Let me go and figure this out.
Yeah, let me go
and then we still have-
continue, get your
I'm
plan.
okay, I thought you wanted to do specifically. a
No,
vendor.
no, I'm
I
not
thought you said
picking
that.
them. No, you asked me not to read the resolution, but the resolution says, and I can change this, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees now authorizes the mayor to award a vendor contract to install and maintain an automatic gate opening system at the gate at a cost of under $20,000, excluding the cost of tags, and to amend the budget to increase the expense line and offset it with unappropriated fund balance A599, and I will add with the approval of the board.
think the opening language probably needs to be amended slightly as well.
Brian, can you take care of that for me? Good man. Would you hand in this? Thank you.
We're just giving
I
him
don't-
the authority to,
Yeah,
basically go and do the diligence on these systems and come back to us with a recommendation.
right. It could be before next meeting, or it looks like it'll likely be
Right.
next meeting.
Right.
Is that all right with you?
Right now, it's authorizing him to actually enter into a contract.
Right, which we're gonna modify.
Yeah, so in other words, you just, instead of authorizing the actual entrance of the contract, you're
Correct.
gonna do due diligence?
Diligence and make a recommendation, and then,
Yeah,
Do we
I
need a
mean, I don't think we
resolution
need
for
to do this resolution. We can just say that one, the resolution to authorize the mayor to, obtain, do due diligence for bidders for the auto gate system vendor and to recommend, vendor to the board. So we
Take
don't
it.
adopt that motion. You can do
I adopt that motion.
I'll
Could I have a second?
I second.
Discussion?
no,
All in favor? And thank you for your comments. That'll make the position much, that'll make it much
So,
better.
so look, everybody has to use the gate, right? So I don't want to make sure that we explore all the options and not have any unintended consequences.
I agree,
Right?
for
And
sure.
then
Nothing wrong with that.
I hate to repeat, like, so,
We're gonna put you on the committee.
okay.
We're coming for you. Okay, now, I would like to move on to new business and discuss the collecting of delinquent water bills. Trustee Casker gave a very good presentation to the board before this meeting about issues and potential solutions. We have a lot of outstanding bills. We don't have a system. We have outdated infrastructure and equipment. So I thought I would just bring that into the public domain today. Jeff left and John Bellows not here to chime in, unfortunately. Brian, you had also said you could make some recommendations. We want to just get that discussion started and then continue it at the next meeting. Chris?
Sure. So obviously we have two types of customers. We have town customers and we have village customers. Right now, generally, we never have a water bill that's delinquent for more than a year with the village customer because we just assess it to their taxes and then the village water department gets paid. We don't have that luxury with the town. And to me, I don't think it's equitable and fair that a town customer continues to assess late fees because we don't have that solution for a town customer. And it's also a burden administratively on our employees to continue to engage these town customers to try to get their water bill paid. Obviously, they have to pay their bills. And so I know there was talk once before about trying to set up a water district with the town. I don't know the pros and cons for the town. And I don't know what I've never had to refer anybody to collections. I don't know if that's just the easiest thing to do is have Denise refer to collections. I don't know if we can take a small claims court. Just, I think it's appropriate to have some options so we can get this out of Denise's hands, get the bills paid or whatever remedies are available. So Brian, what do we do?
So, yeah, I mean, my option number one would be the water district in the town. That's the easiest and cleanest way to do it. So what happens in a water district is you would ask the town to establish a water district that would coincide with the outside users of village water. That would be the district, the hamlet, whatever it is. And then, once that's established, basically, those water users are billed through the town with the money being paid to the village. But the biggest advantage is it makes them just like your village users. If they don't pay, it can be assessed as a lien on the property the same way that it can within the village. I think maybe in 2018, under Mayor Ginchar, that attempt was made. At that time, the town wasn't interested in forming the water district. I don't know why or what the discussion was, but maybe that can be revisited. That would be option number one.
What would the advantage to the town be to do that?
It's not so much an advantage, but at the same time, it doesn't really cost them anything because they can assess the administrative costs as part of the process. So once it's set up, there are only, I guess, disadvantages. We have to go and, establish a district and petition and create, they can do it themselves. But again, the village could agree to absorb the costs for the initial establishment of the district.
Right.
And you could still then assess those costs on the district when it's created, if you wanted to do that. So it's not so much that there's a downside to the town, it's just going through the process of establishing it. And once it's done, they would be doing the administrative part, but again, they can be reimbursed for that, so. And I don't think you're talking about a large district here.
It's 300 some customers.
Yeah, so after that, if it's not a water district, then you're back to collection, shutting off water. Right now, your code, chapter 97, does provide for the shut off of water, but there's really no guidelines. I don't know if you have separate rules, but you should. Generally, for example, water should not be shut off outside of business hours, should not be shut off on a Friday. You need to have some regulations, should not be shut off for somebody who has a medical condition, but you can do that. It's an option. If you give notice, 15, 20 days notice, if they don't pay, certified mail, all that, you could shut off the water. That usually gets you paid.
Yeah, one of the problems we have there in terms of infrastructure is that we might have one meter
Yeah. you
that
can
goes
shut
to
off
8
one.
different tenants on a building.
Right.
And obviously you can't do that. So, I mean, we should be upgrading that infrastructure anyway,
Right.
I would think. So from that perspective, I'd like information from Jeff and John Bello in terms of, and John, obviously, in terms of what the extent of that problem is and the potential cost. What do you think, John?
No, it's something we should discuss. I don't think it's overly complicated, but a policy has to be just put into place.
And then we would make it local law.
I think we would amend the existing law to maybe have some more specifics, or we can amend the law to say that, water shut off shall be in accordance with rules and regulations to be adopted by resolution of the board. So this way, if you need to make a change, you're not having to amend the law every time. One aspect would be what is the cost of being able to shut off individual users that you can't do right now? Because otherwise you're down to collection, going
Right.
to court. You can include, which I don't think you do right now, that any collection, attorney's fees, costs in collecting an unpaid bill would be assessed to the property owner.
And
So,
what's the likelihood of that?
well, again, it comes down to, is there money to be obtained? If
Right.
somebody's not paying their water bill.
Right.
They're.
Do any of your municipalities use collection services for this?
Honestly, I think most of the municipalities I deal with don't have outside water users.
Right.
They're all either water districts. I mean, it would only be
So they're able
villages,
to
'cause
lean the taxes.
all the towns I have, there's no outside users. And then if they are, they're by agreement, they can just cut off the water. Villages, only if they have a system where they're giving water outside. Another thing you could do is when people sign up, might be a little late now for some, is require, a deposit. At least that would give you some money. In other words, in order to connect to the system, figure out what the average use is, and maybe it's 6 months or something upfront as a deposit that stays on file. If they don't pay, at least you have some recourse for some portion of the bill. So it could be a combination of those things, but if it comes to collections, it's difficult, to be
Yeah.
honest. Because you're gonna spend more money sometimes than the bill you're trying to collect on.
I think the town should really consider the water district because it definitely provides a better climate for the users who aren't the most responsive. Jay, you wanna?
You suggested that I'm not supposed to.
No, I'm talking about the few people that aren't paying their water bill and we want to do the right thing and not turn the water off on them. But you can always
We
assess the taxes.
appreciate that. Let me put my town council hat on for the moment. This is not a subject that the current town board has, it's not on our radar.
Yeah. It just got on ours,
Right.
so.
That being said, certainly interested in exploring this further, and we can see what makes the most sense for the village and the town and our respective residents. And I'd be happy to be the point of contact with you, Chris, to sort of figure out how.
Thank you.
Here and I'll bring it forward.
Okay, my pleasure.
So, gang, what about, we table, but with some specific deliverables?
Yep.
Potentially a report from a brief meeting
Yeah,
between you two?
one more thing, just
Yeah.
on the, we have council. The other issue is who does the name of the person who's billed. Right now, we kind of leave it up to the customer, whether it's a tenant or the owner. I used to live in a district where the owner, regardless of where they lived, was the person who got billed, even if it was in Virginia, which was my situation when I lived in another place in New York. That's another cause of administrative burden on Denise, who's collecting from tenants. And they just just leave, and then the owner's like, well, it wasn't my, I didn't use the water, so I'm not paying, right? So is that just something that we put into a policy that if we want to say, hey, only property owners are the ones that are gonna be on the bill, tax?
I think you could do that, that the bill will be in the name of the property owner. And, you know, like a single family and somebody renting it, it goes to the property owner. So this way, you don't run into a problem when you're assessing the lien on the property. You know, it goes to that very property and that owner.
What's the entitlement housing? Section 8? Entitlement housing, Section 8?
Section 8, yeah.
Do we have any Section 8 customers? I'm just curious. Of course, those rules are different. We also had the COVID thing this year. You can't really turn on people's water.
Yeah, well, that's why the water district.
Yeah,
Well, that ended, I mean, it ended obviously with the state of emergency, otherwise would have ended in December, but, you know, in terms of the water district, that's why it's the cleanest way, because it gets assessed. If it doesn't get
No
paid,
pun
you're gonna-
intended.
You're gonna collect it, right?
Okay, so.
Say
what about
something.
lives?
Can I say something?
Report from meeting.
Think
Yeah.
has something.
Go ahead, Tinka.
Yeah, there is another option if the town does not agree to a separate water district, is that we can charge the town higher water rates to cover the non-payable things. So that would help us recoup some money, but it would harm the people who pay their bills because they have to pay higher water rates to cover the people who do not pay their bills.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Just
John,
another thought along those lines is if you have a non-paying customer, you know, you're gonna a provision that would increase the water rates after a certain amount of time. Up for that customer, so this way the other person is not paying.
They're already getting.
all right, so the point is, we have info to discuss between now and the next meeting.
So the next step is for Jay and I to have a conversation about water
See
district,
what
right?
the tolerance level is for the town to do
Explore
that.
that option, 'cause that
And then
seems to be.
You and I, John, can meet with John and Jeff and see what the scope of infrastructure is. But if we're only gonna build the tenant, I mean, the owner, then it wouldn't be necessary to have individual meters, would it?
It's not the individual meters, it's that there are a number of duplexes and homes in the town where there's one water main, then it branches off, and there's only one shut off. So the
I
issue,
see.
the issue really is to
Interesting.
install a second shut off so we have control over the flow of water.
Got it.
Otherwise, you can't shut it off. Otherwise, you know, one person may be paying, which is typically the case, and the other one is not, and you can't.
That's why the water district solves your problem, you're not shutting off,
Right.
you're just assessing.
Trustee Caster, do you know what our total receivables are over 90, for example, in water?
Oh,
Somewhere in here.
yeah, there
Do
is.
you know, Tinka?
I think the town is something like 80 grand now.
80 grand, over 90?
I don't know. I don't remember offhand, but it's
Let's
significant.
not show our account.
Yeah, it's, anyway, it's in Denise's report.
Yeah, I don't know what the town is. We're doing it like.
Yeah, we have-
Do we know what our
800
total
grand a year.
receivable is? Finance guy? Sir,
Yes, sir.
Just one item that is gonna come up, having discussed infrastructure in general. So water infrastructure, like the sewer infrastructure in the hamlet was installed in late 18, actually newer than that, it's 19 something. But it is old and, I mean, it's beyond old, it's antiquated and beyond its useful life. Most of the water mains down there are transite, so that's the thing. So part of this discussion of water districts is gonna be who's responsible for upkeep and maintenance
right.
and replacement.
And you're going through that now with your new sewer system. I
We
was
are.
at that meeting.
Which is partially your sewer system.
Right, right. Yeah, I was at that meeting. Bonnie brought up the issue.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so here, the town owes 82,000 and the village is at 25,500.
25,500, 25,500 is what, over 90? And the village and the town is 82 grand over 90.
Well, no, the town is, over 90 is 46.
46. What about our over 90?
Actually, no, it's hard to tell because she has a split up. So 0 to 6 month is 36,000 and over 6 months is 46,000. So hard to tell
Okay.
if 90.
Okay, all right. Everybody satisfied so far on the
Yeah.
board with this discussion and where we're going?
Yes.
Okay, let's move on. I just wanted to bring up that I met with Councilwoman Michelle Lindsay and also met with some members of the board, offered to meet with all of them, and I'm sure that will take place, to look at a piece of property owned by the town just north of the sewer plant on the Weewaw, moving up Warwick Brook Road. So I guess that would be west. And as a potential area for relocating the village office and DPW building. And so we don't know exactly what lot or lots we would need. The good news was that right off the bat, what I showed Councilwoman Lindsay was not something in her immediate purview of what they were going to hope to develop along 17. But we have to put some money out, guys, to do a little feasibility to an engineer to do a little schematic drawing to determine really what, how much land we need, and then approach the town with that. So I did send a letter to Town Supervisor Ken English, and he and I are going to meet shortly to look at the property. But there's nothing really to do today other than to put into the public domain that John and I have made appointments with our 3 village engineers to ask for feasibility numbers. And the reason we're not just going with one is because in our comptroller's report from a couple of years ago, Brian, you remember this? They felt that we were, just because someone was a professional, we should still be going out for bid on certain types of projects, right?
Yeah, not bid, but yeah.
For quotes.
Yeah.
Which is what we're doing.
All right.
And I hope they'll recognize that. And of course, we're obligated to pick the one that we think. It doesn't have to be the lowest price when you're getting quotes. It's the one that you think is the most experience. But I just wanted to put that into the public domain. Anybody have any questions on that?
No.
Any comment on that?
No, that's fine. Happy to see you.
We hope that it would work out. It'd be something great for both parties. I
Yeah,
think.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I can put my engineer hat on and say, qualifications-based selection, please, then argue price.
Right. Okay, we'll talk about that, actually. I'd like some input on that. Okay, now, we received a letter from Dale Jenkins. I'll name him because he's here. About removing an invasive vine species, which is prominent throughout New York State. When I was driving on the New York State through the other day, I couldn't believe it. These vines are everywhere. It's beautiful, but you know, it takes down the trees ultimately. So Dale asked us to consider a resolution requiring owners to remove it. And of course, I would think that the village would also have to do the same if we're asking the residents to do it. And I'd like to get a handle on that and assess the scope of that. You know, we own a lot of acreage. And, you know, is our DPW capable of doing that? Would we have to go out and get bids? So I just wanted to put this in the public domain. Now, I'm also going to ask Dale if you would like to speak on the subject.
Well, first of all, I think we all know what's involved. We need to go no further out than right outside, on the other side of this lot. If you come in Tuxedo Road, by the time you're making the bend just before you get to Harrow Road, there's a vast expanse there. Somebody has plowed or bulldozed this. I'm not sure who did it or why, but it's really a short-term measure because all the edges are still full of these vines.
Where is that exactly?
It's
Maxwell's Corner.
Maxwell's Corner.
Maxwell's Corner. What is that?
Just before you turn to go up Tower Hill, before you get.
Oh, yeah. I know what happened there, actually. There is it's for sale. It's for sale. So they wanted to clear it. Yeah.
There are other areas.
Mhm.
And wherever these vines come from, it's a recent migration into this whole area, and it goes outside. I copied our representatives to the Assembly and the Senate because it is a statewide problem. they ought to be doing something about it. On Route 17 going north towards Harriman, there's vast areas there. Between ourselves and Sloatsburg, there's areas. So question number one, is this a problem we want to deal with? Or should we just let it go? If it's something we want to deal with, then how do we deal with it? Who's going to do what? Who's going to pay for it? How do we enforce it? I mentioned a lien. It's also possible to perhaps a fine, as I've heard. Mrs. Hempel, is she on the phone? Somebody, I thought she was going to be.
She is.
Okay, fine. She is an expert in this area. And has identified some other species in this category. So if we think it is a problem, then what do we do?
Right.
If these are going to be removed, who's going to do it? Who's going to pay for it? How do we enforce it?
I asked Chu Yin to contact you directly last week.
Yes.
And she did. And I wanted to get you two together because I thought maybe the board would benefit from a recommendation to the questions you're raising right now. I am not an expert, but just off the top of my head, it seems like a major problem.
Well, I recommended the lead. Maybe there are other.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's many ways to skin the cat. I think that this evening, this is new to the board, basically. Would you guys like to request recommendations from Dale and the TAB?
That would be how.
And then consider it for the next meeting?
Yeah.
I think it's totally appropriate to get the TAB involved and let us know what they think. And I appreciate this being brought to our attention.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Just to piggyback on this issue, all of our ash trees. Yeah. I mean, I personally, I think that the vines are a problem, no question. But I think these trees, which are dead and have been dead and are right on our roads, that's a bigger problem for the general public than vines.
Yeah, when I was on the lake the other day, the area from the old Curry house, currently the Langdon house, over to Cindy's, there's 34 dead trees there from it.
Well, the vines climb up living trees as well as dead trees.
They are both problems. And they're problems that present different dangers at different times. Yes.
Our weather isn't getting better.
Yes. Now, we do have a property law. John, you want to describe the 50-foot law?
Yes, all residents are required to maintain 50 feet perimeter around their entire property, regardless of whether there's a road or not, from any hazardous trees, dead or alive if they're leaning heavily. They're supposed to be taken care of.
And then the village, I mean, I just think.
Can I do that on a Sunday?
Nope.
Nope. Then the village, of course, has, tons of stuff. And we're going to be removing some trees that are down and so forth where we can. But this is a huge problem. Dale, thank you for bringing it up. We're going to seek information from the TAB, and if you'd like to work with them, that'd be great. And
Every Saturday, we have diviners come and peel, take away vines.
shouldn't that take place on Sunday?
Saturdays and Sundays, diviners.
Diviners.
Volunteer group.
Chu Yin?
Yeah.
Is that okay with you to get involved?
I think, we would be delighted to, work with Dale to come up with some recommendations. Because as far as invasives is concerned, it's not just the kudzu trees, kudzu vines that Dale pointed out. We're also suffering from a blight of one plant that is called Japanese knotweed. And this particular plant can take out the foundation of any structure. In the UK, actually, it's been banned and made illegal for any property to own to actually have such a vine on site. And then there is another invasive tree that is called Hercules Club, and it is all over Tuxedo Park at the moment and all along Route 17. But the problem with a lot of these invasives is that you can't just go ask the homeowner, say, you've got to look after your property, deal with them. Because there are some very specific steps you need to take. Take, for instance, Hercules Club. If you just cut it down, ask your landscaper to cut it down, it will grow back in the forest the next year because it spreads by the rhizomes. So if you cut it, it becomes very defensive, so to speak, and it just sprouts like crazy. So unfortunately, with Hercules Club, the only way that it can be gotten rid of is to be cut, but immediately for the landscaper to apply to the cut stem a squirt of herbicide. And it is very important not for the homeowner not to spray, because if we just do a massive spray, and I'm concerned that the property that Dale actually mentioned along at the corner of Tuxedo Road and Tower Hill, that owner might just have sprayed the cut porcelain berries and kudzu. And the reason why that is a problem is that that property is within 100 feet of the reservoir. What goes down the earth will get filtered down and it goes into the lake. So we have to be really careful about recommending the treatment, how it should be done. And we would require homeowners to actually be a little bit more vigilant and do some supervision of their landscapers. Because in the past, it was pointed out to me that there was a whole growth of Japanese knotweed on a couple of properties. And then I was, alerted to the fact that they were cut and just sprayed the whole growth.
Well, one of the
That's
things
not
that
the
we
way
need to
to
do,
do it.
Chu Yin, is update a chapter in the design guidelines.
Yeah, I think that would be a great thing to do. And also, sort of when we're ready, maybe the tree board with the Board of Trustees' blessing and support can send out an advisory memo. But at the end of the day, I'm afraid it comes down to also one very important word, enforcement.
Yes.
How do we get homeowners to actually do the right thing? Because unfortunately, most, a lot of the kudzu and Japanese knotweed and Hercules Club, they are on private properties. Because the tree board in the past 6 years have been diligently removing those vines from the DPW site and particularly from the racetrack. And a little bit also from the village office.
Okay.
So the infestations are all on private properties.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Let's move on. We have on the agenda now a discussion of the riparian barrier. And I don't know, I'm just asking this off the cuff, but I believe you had a meeting with Jim today. Maybe have some information to share or their wishes.
It was really no more than what was in his letter to the board and his report. I think there was a request that the board consider hiring an expert in the area. Her name is Nancy Minich. Her resume was actually as part of that report, very impressive. And we discussed talking about maybe some interim steps as opposed to just going all the way. Maybe, for example, with the South Park, maybe you give her an opportunity to show what she's capable of doing with that park and get some advice from her there. And I think Jim's very open. I think open to having that conversation.
Did you get a chance to read through the documents? Have any views?
I have nothing to object to what Josh just outlined.
Right.
All for taking a look at options.
So should we, now I also had invited the TAB to provide me with input for the riparian barrier of the South Park. So I'll talk to Chu Yin and the TAB and discuss that and maybe give this person an opportunity to give us a little proposal to do that? Okay, any comments? Okay, all right, so let's discuss the stone wall on Summit Road. As part of our capital budget and project that the former board approved, one of the projects is the examination and repair of that piece of the village road. It appears that a tree or two have fallen on that in the middle of that area. Does everyone here know what I'm talking about? When you're on Summit Road up at the top, what's the intersection? Ontia. And it's a massive cut and fill. Clearly was original. You know, the cut is severe into the rock, and then there's, I don't know, 30, 40 feet down, and it's bulging. And so what I decided to do was, again, through receiving quotes, go out to the 3 village engineers. And we've invited them to come look. We met with one so far, and Sampson and Weston and Sampson. And they gave us a thorough written proposal with recommendations. This would be a significantly expensive fix, you know, if not $1 million, somewhere in there. Wow. Now, obviously, this is something we would have to bond. Potentially there's a grant, potentially there's insurance involved. I don't know. But it's certainly not the responsibility of the owner, and that was one of the property. Even though the property maps show the potential that wall might be within that property, it's clearly a village matter, because if you use the cut and fill model that we've used for so many years, like the Buterich model and others, you know, the roads originally were cut in and filled, or they were more decorative, like say on Serpentine Road. All right, that's decorative. So whoever owns, I know that the Cachiopas fixed that wall. So I believe that property is owned by Larson's. Right, the Larsons. And, you know, I guess prior boards were in dispute with them over taking care of it. And I think that's a dead end. So, you know, that's my recommendation. Do you have any suggestions for me? I would like to just proceed with these bids and prices and feasibility studies and see where we go. They're free.
I'm totally fine with that. I personally would like to go and see it
Yeah.
with you if that works.
Yeah, sure. John or I.
Or John,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've taken Tinka and the engineers, obviously, we've
Totally
taken.
fine exploring it and getting
Yeah.
that. I'd like to see it
Definitely
done.
need options.
We need options. I don't know if it's gonna be, you know, maybe even condemning. It's or doing what we did with Pond 3 Bridge, which is limiting the weight of vehicles that are allowed to travel on it. Any audit of claims?
Yes. General fund, first claim number 49866, and then it goes sequentially from 49911 to 50190, and the amount is $426,700.56. The water fund, the claim numbers go from 10525 to 10579, the amount of $181,901.02. And professional fees, claim numbers 3048 through 3058, and the amount being $394.04.
Yes. For the record, I've reviewed them and I'm signing them. Do we have any budget transfers?
Bill for the metal maintenance, and it's $2,100. The only budgeted amount so far is $1,500. We could like to transfer $2,100 into that budget line.
Do you have a resolution?
No.
Want to write one right now? I'm sorry. should we do a resolution to transfer the funds?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You just say it.